And I'll call the roll call again. So it's myself and Mark and Daryl and Adam and Alice. And I would elevate Annie and David to voting status for the time being. And then I would still like to read the rules for the rules for the public hearing, or not the public hearing, but the virtual meeting. So I'm going to let those open up, and here we go. So this is a web-based call. So we are operating under the following procedures. This session is being audio recorded, just like every other Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Please be advised that today, as with all of our video meetings, we are also recording the video proceedings. To ensure sound quality, the default rule should be that we are all on mute unless we are speaking. I would prefer that we are all on video if we have the capability. That way I can see raised hands or facial expressions for people who want to speak. If we can't be on video, then Donna, I'll rely on you to monitor the chat to let me know or let us know if there's somebody who is raising their hand via text. Let's see, applicants and members of the public should feel free to leave their video on or off, on when you're speaking or on when you want to speak. And you will all get a chance to speak if you would like. And then during these public hearings, I think all of the normal rules should apply. We should all try to be patient with each other. We should listen intently to what we each have to say, give each other the opportunity to say what we want, and then be quiet so that others can speak and say what they want, so we can be thoughtful. So that's it. So going back to the agenda, is there anybody in the audience who has business before the commission who is not on the agenda? Then I would suggest that we move directly to the reading and approval of the minutes from September 10, 2020, and those are the regular meeting minutes. And I would look for a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I move that we approve the regular meeting of September 10th, 2020 as written.
Second.
Okay, thanks you too. Is there any discussion? And then I would call a vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Daryl. You're a little bit early there. I thought you were telling me, hey, wait. Okay, so then let's move right on to the first piece of business, which I think will be let's move on to the first piece of business, which is the HiWatch application number 51-20SP and 52-20C. Vincent Roberti Jr. for HiWatch Recovery Center, Inc., 47 Carter Road, map 14, block 21, lot 17. Construction of a 30 by 70 greenhouse, 30 foot by 70 foot greenhouse. And I would open the public hearing. I think that's appropriate at this point. Yes, Donna?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And I'm going to recuse.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. Nothing changes for the For the members who have been elevated to voting status, that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us voting. So I would, I think that I would open the floor to Donna first to see if there's anything new that we need to consider.
Just doing a little housekeeping. So I don't know if you want me to read the 2 letters that were submitted for the last meeting's public hearing that we were not able to read because it came in after, or if you want to do something else.
I think now would be an appropriate time to hear those letters, Donna. I didn't see them in the, and so I don't think I have them.
Okay. All right, so I'll read them. One is from Dolores Miller. This one is dated Thursday, September 10th. What she says is, we oppose more expansion of Highwatch. We live in a residential area, not a commercial zone. Our rights as residential property owners have been infringed upon enough by the ongoing construction at Highwatch. Ruben and Dolores Miller, sorry, Ginger, get down. And then the second one was also dated Thursday, September 10th, and this is from Mr. Jerry Miller, to whom it may concern. I oppose the expansion of this business on a quiet rural road. A tremendous expansion is already underway, and it appears with this new proposal, the intention is to continue to expand and permanently change the makeup of the community. Jerry Miller. I haven't gotten anything new since then. So those are that's the last bit of information that I have from the public.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Is there anything that we were excited? I know there was, but could you remind me what we were expecting to hear from Highwatch after our last meeting?
Yes, we had asked Vinny for clarification as to who was going to be running the farm, who was going to be working in the greenhouse, and was this part of the therapeutic program that currently exists across the street at 62 Carter Road. And on September 24th, I did receive a letter from Mr. Jason Perillo in response to that request. And I believe that's in your packet of information.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to read it or if you want to read it or.
I would say that the reading of that is not necessary as it's in the public record, right? So it's included with the agenda for this meeting filed on the town website.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So let me then, as somewhat standard procedure, open the floor to the applicant. And Jason and Vinny, I'll let you both, maybe Jason, I'll let you quarterback and then you can let us know if there's anything you want to tell us.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Jason Perillo. I am the Vice President of Communications at Highwatch. Donna referenced a letter that I sent to her and to the commission a few weeks ago. That was obviously, as she said, in response to some questions from the commission. And the letter is somewhat self-explanatory, and sort of at the core of the question was, is the hoop house related to the therapeutic use? As you recall, this was a farm for many years. We introduced the therapeutic use a few years ago after we purchased the property and went through the application process with you folks. The hoop, and again, as a reminder, this is 1,000 feet off the road. No one is going to see this. And I just think it's important to remember that. The primary goal, though, it is really not therapeutic in nature. We're not trying to expand any therapeutic programs. And I know Vin referenced this at your last meeting in September. The goal is really to be able to become more self-sustaining in terms of the food we offer to our guests across the street at 62 Carter Road. We've actually gotten pretty good at this, and in terms of growing vegetables and utilizing that in our kitchen across the street. And this is simply a way for us to expand that and do it in seasons where we otherwise wouldn't be able to. It's been an approach we sort of thought might work, when we first did this, and it has proven to work very well. So we just simply want to continue that use. It will be farmed primarily by our staff. We actually have staff, and as well as the residents of 47 Carter Road, who are right there on the property. They will do most of the work in that. I don't know if that answers your questions. If not, I can elaborate.
It answers the question for me, Jason. I read your letter a couple of times. I think I understand what you're telling us. I don't have any other questions regarding that point. Just by way of response to you, does Vinny does Vinny need to say anything, or should we go to the public now?
I mean, you may have some questions, and Vin may be able to chime in, but I really just wanted to focus on the question that you had previously from last month and trying to answer that to the best of my ability.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jason. Then I would open the floor to any members of the public who feel like they have something that, or who would like to say something regarding this application. So I see Ellen. So I'll recognize Ellen Alfest. And you're on mute, so if you would unmute yourself, there you go. Thank you.
I just have a quick question before I make my comments. I know that Donna had looked into the idea that the commission shouldn't be taking this on because of that the previous ruling in February that said that Highwatch can't expand anymore. So, and that you were going to talk to your lawyer about that. That was going to be, and so I was wondering if the lawyer was spoken to.
We had been waiting for the response from Highwatch regarding their whether they believed that this was a therapeutic use and a use that was associated with the therapeutic use on that property now. So I know that we had asked the attorney, but we asked the attorney only very recently because we just really recently received the response from Highwatch. I think that we have enough information, or I think that I have enough information, and I will open that up for the commission to weigh in whether they believe they've got enough information to make a decision on that question, which I think we'll discuss once we start speaking amongst the commission.
Yeah.
Oh, on the question, if you have to, if you have to consult with the lawyer or not, or, okay. Well, I'm gonna let other people speak, and then if I'd like to make some comments after that. Thank you. I just want to ask that question before I spoke. Thank you.
All right, Matt, I did hear from Mike. Yeah, he did respond back to me on this.
Okay, yeah, I saw, check your email, Donna. I just,
Okay,
yeah, check your email and then get back to me. It's offline, and then we can discuss that response from the attorney when we talk with the commission.
okay.
I don't mean to be cloak and dagger. I just haven't seen the response yet. So that's something that we would like to consider. So it sounds like, Ellen, that we have heard from the attorney. He's weighed in. I just don't know what that says yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sure. So I see, I see a couple of other people from the, yes, Sharon.
I just have a question. I know I don't live in Kent, but I have a business in Kent. Just out of curiosity, will 100% of the produce grown be used for High Watch, or will it be sold like at the farmer's market in Kent?
Our intention is to use it entirely on site. Quite frankly, I don't even expect that this expansion that we're proposing, that this additional hoop house will meet 100% of our needs. So, we'll be able to utilize all of it on site.
Kind of exciting.
Is there anybody, thank you, Sharon.
Sorry.
So I see a couple of other familiar faces and names. Is there anybody, it's Mrs. Altfest, would you like to speak, or Mr. Colvin?
I'll
I
go.
see Alan is ready. Okay, Alan.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay. So I just think that we just have to keep this in mind. Like the neighbor on our in Kent who told us about this, the way she presented it to me is they're building a 2,100 square foot greenhouse that's larger than my whole house. So, I mean, I think, this is a really, I mean, we talked last time, Karen had said something about, why is this such a big deal? And to my mind, and you had said, oh, it's, we're probably upset because of the current construction and stuff. And that's, making us more irritable or something. But really, I think that this is and I understand how this could help maybe other, people at the Kent Greenhouse and all that stuff. And it's, seems like a small thing. We're not gonna see it and this and that. And I really just think that this issue is larger than the hoop house itself. It's like the commission, and Daryl was the person who said, like, by passing that thing we talked about last week in February, it was to make it so that High Watch can't expand anymore. And if then the commission accepts a further expansion of any kind, even though this one seems harmless and environmentally friendly, which I actually I'll talk more about. I think that it's just a precedent for using the land in a different way than it was approved for initially, which was a therapeutic use. This, Mr. Perillo says that this won't even meet their needs. So there's obviously a large chance of further expansion in their farming operation. And once you, say that this can be used as farming, who knows what's going to happen. So, I mean, also, it's not just High Watch, really. This was meant to, the rule that was put in place in February that made it so that High Watch was going to have to, and all the, institutions in Kent were going to have to go straight to the appeals, were that if you, that was supposed to give teeth to the commission. This is like a very litigious organization, High Watch, and no one of us can afford to fight them, including the town. So this is not just for High Watch, but this prevents further expansion from all of these different rehab places that we have in town. So I think that it's not just a hoop house. It's overriding something that was put into place by the commission to give the commission teeth. And if you take some sort of variance or whatever now, you're setting a precedent that for future expansion. And we're just up to our necks in expansion. Like High Watch has gotten everything they want at our expense, and we missed that meeting, and now we're suffering like the meeting last year. But that I was really comforted to think, okay, there's not going to be further expansion. They're going to have to show hardship if they want to expand further. this harmless hoop house is just a test. Like, is the commission going to approve further expansion of High Watch or not? And I'm really hoping that even if a few jobs aren't created or whatever, that this expansion, that this hoop house would give some people, that that it's much more than it's much more than what it appears to be. So I think it is very serious. And I also think that in terms of the commission, that the expanding rehab centers and everything are taking so much of the commission's time and energy and the resources of the town in general. And, by enforcing this limitation and sending this to the zoning board of appeals, it takes a weight off the commission, to be constantly, we're going to be constantly fighting and, have these like meetings that go to 10 p.m. and this and that. And then we're going to have to hire attorneys at our own expense, which is expensive. And I just think it's just like, stick to what you agreed on in February, show the High Watch that you have teeth, and then as a commission and move on. This isn't a good precedent, and it also changes the use of the property. And, there's no knowing, you talked last week about creep. And I thought that was I'm not in the zoning board, zoning commission thing, but I thought that was that's what this is, it's creep, it's precedent. And it's not even though it's maybe a flimsy structure, it's not a small building. There will be more people working on it, as Vinny said last week, even though they dialed that back this week. And I just think that it has to be overturned to preserve the commission's control over the expansion of all of these facilities, not just High Watch. That's my feeling. Thank you.
And Matt, I have a question. The speaker has made several references to some action that we took forbidding further expansion in High Watch. I'm not aware of that. Is there any such action ever taken?
Mark, I think what Ellen is referring to is the fact that we removed the use that High Watch is operating under from our approved uses for the property. So any increase to the use would be considered an increase to a pre-existing non-conforming, and that would have to go to the zoning board of appeals. Not that we have said that High Watch can't do anything else, or that we have. That's simply the language that we're operating under. That it's no longer a permitted use. It's a pre-existing non-conforming, and not any change to what they're doing, but any increase to the non-conformity, we can't really rule on.
I understand. Okay, thanks.
Okay. And thank you for your comments, Alan. I was on mute when I tried to say thank you before, so I'll say that now.
So thank you for calling on me before. And, I'd love to talk just for a minute and tell the people where you are. Thank you. Tell the people where you are in all your rooms, what it's like living on Carter Road. And I just wonder, maybe you could tell me, because every time I look at this, I wonder and wonder, how is there a sign on the bottom of Carter Road and Route 7 that's bigger than the street sign that says Carter Road? You could just not see the one that says Carter Road, but there's this huge, was that approved too? I mean, is the whole road High Watch, or I don't understand how that got there. And I'd love to see it go. And, every time I come up the road, I stop and count the trucks that are outside with building now. They come and they go and they zip past my house. They're not going 30 miles an hour. They're not going 35. They're not going 40. I'm a driver. I know 65 when I see it. They're going and going and going up and down and back and forth. And the other day I took pictures. I counted 22 trucks. 22, not one, not two. I'm not bothered by a little construction. 22 trucks. That's a lot for Carter Road. So what's going to happen when we have something new built? I just don't understand it. Plus, last week I had a couple of people pull up in a car. They said their GPS sent them here, and could I direct them to High Watch Farm? Well, I said, yes, I could. And I didn't say anything further. And this, he said, well, will you? So I directed him. But, I mean, it's taken over. It's really taken over. It's a Godzilla next door. So I hope you'll give that some consideration. It's just spread out like something with like a lot of tentacles. It's spread out. And so I don't know if the person who works at High Watch Farm has ever viewed it this way, if he's ever here days and nights, if he has people asking him where, driving into his home and asking how to get somewhere over and over and over. There's been 23 years of people asking me, and I send them all to you as fast as I can because they're in my driveway. And so it's not workable. Now it's going to get worse. How much worse could it get? I mean, pretty soon we'll all have to arrive in helicopters because there's no room for us on our own road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Altfest. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to speak before I open this up to maybe some discussion with the commission? And for those who are joining, what I would prefer is that we are all on video when we want to speak. So if there's somebody who would like to speak, turn your video on and sort of wave at me. That way I don't miss anybody. Okay, Mr. Perillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to address one of the last comments that was made. We do not expect to have to hire any additional staff. We have more than enough people to do what we need to do. The simple fact of the matter is that we can't do it in January, but a hoop house will help us do that. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the commission to ask any questions. Maybe let's not have our discussion about on the merits of the application, but certainly let's use this next segment to ask questions of the applicant, so that we can better make our decision. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Colvin.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I didn't know if you could see me. Am I coming through? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up a little. I'll make it quick. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on Karen's comments about the road, which I know it's not a decision or anything that can be done about right now, but it is what kind of like fuels more, kind of unrest about even, having to consider new situations like this is the number of trucks on the road. If you drive on this road right where this construction is being done, it's at the peak of a hill. And so anytime the people, 18 wheelers or the contractor trucks, whatever, pickups, they narrow the road. So it actually ends up being a blind space because you're going up, but that's going to be the exact same place where another car is going to be coming through. And then you're going to have dust if it's gray, if it's gravel, or brown if it's dirt, dust. And so I just actually this guy, I didn't almost run over him, but he wanted to try to dart across because he has a hard time getting across because no one can see. And but I think that's where a lot of frustration is coming from, is because just the idea of anything more anything bringing another car more up there is just kind of, kind of sending us over the top. But what I would like to say is I feel like there's, some double speak going on in terms of this request for High Watch. It's say we want to be self-sustaining, but I mean, and we are self-sustaining. We would like to continue that. I mean, I think continue doing that is like actually the words. Well, it's just like, no, that's not true. That's why we're all here talking, is because you're not being self-sustaining, and we're here making requests, and here we all, none of us really want to be here to just say, no, you're not being self-sustaining. No, we're tired of having to, push back this constant enterprise. And so, last time I mentioned an article from the 90s where the president, might have been earlier from that, but the president written in the New York Times, the president, apologizing for having a campaign to have funds to just repair their own buildings because they were so old from the original establishment. But but look where we are now on what's quote unquote self-sustaining, and it's just I don't. Again, Ellen mentioned we can't afford attorneys every time there's whatever, and it's just this, it's just that. But I mean, I remember Lou mentioned the last time with Mr. Roberti's application to turn his home into a convalescent home. It's just like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It isn't going to stop. The request probably never will stop, but the yeses can. And so I would just like for the yeses. The yeses can stop, and it should just be no. It should have been no a long time ago. It should be no now. So thanks for, hearing that, my piece on that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for your thoughts. All of this is really helpful. So why don't I ask the commission members for some, unless maybe Mr. Altfest, do you have something that you want to contribute? Okay, thank you. Then anything from the commission members? Any questions that they have of the applicant that would that would help us make our decision?
This is David.
Yes, hi, David.
Hey, just a few quick questions. You said you'd be putting in a hydrant in the greenhouse, and that's coming from somewhere to provide water?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to defer that to Vin.
Yeah, sorry. Let's make sure I'm on. Yeah, there'll be water in the greenhouse for watering plants, just a cold water line, and that's supplied from the existing horse barn that has its own well. So it's about 160 feet of plastic pipe that'll be buried in the ground so it doesn't freeze in the winter, and it'll just pop up inside the greenhouse. But it doesn't feed a sink or toilets or anything like that. It's irrigation. So yes, there will be water for irrigation.
And the other active uses on the property are, horse ring has horses in it. Are there other things going on the property?
Sure. So we've got the horse stables and the horse ring, obviously, for the equine work that we do. There's the farm that has been described, and we've talked about that. I know Vin talked about that quite a bit at the last hearing. As you know, there's residents on the property, and the ropes course is on the property as well.
Matt, I have a question. This is Alice Hicks.
Okay,
Can you hear
Alice.
me?
Alice, before you start, I just want, for the record, say that the people who are just speaking, Jason has introduced himself, and it was Vincent Roberti of High Watch who Jason deferred the last question to regarding the yard hydrant for the water. So go ahead, Alice. Sorry.
Yes, well, my question is for Jason and Vincent. In your letter, Jason, you say these new therapies would include equine therapy, a ropes course and climbing wall, and a therapeutic agricultural program, and accompanying kitchen facility. Do the guests there work in the kitchen? And is that why you're including the agricultural program as part of the therapy, like the equine program? There's something a little fuzzy to me between what you do in terms of food for your guests. Are they preparing it themselves and now they'll grow it themselves? I know the guests take care of the horses. So to me, there's something a little vague between what you have to do to feed your guests versus help them rehabilitate themselves. So I don't know that I want a detail of how a person goes through rehabilitation, but to me, there's something fuzzy crossing lines between running the business and your guests getting what they're paid for in terms of rehabilitation.
Sure. So
Can you make myself
makes
clear?
perfect sense. Perfect
Okay.
sense. Let me do my best to answer. So again, everything that we grow is grown at the property at 47 Carter Road. What we're able to utilize across the street in the kitchen at 62 Carter Road, we use. For some guests, a component of their therapy, and to be clear, I'm not a clinician, I'm not a therapist, so I'm going to do the best I can in answering your question. Part of their therapy is actually the act of farming itself. We actually have something called horticulture therapy. Actually, you should look it up. It's actually it's a pretty interesting thing. And that's what we're able to do and incorporate it with the agricultural use that's there. So we have both staff of ours, employees of ours, who farm that property. And we also have guests who, as part of their therapy, do the same thing. And they work together. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I just envision the staff doing the kitchen work, and now you're telling me the guests do the kitchen work too. So it is a gray area. I mean, I shouldn't say gray. It is part of therapy as well as just getting the job done.
Yeah, one of the most important things that we can do for our guests therapeutically is to keep them active and continue their treatment while they're working. We have a number of individuals, many of whom are in our extended program and who stay with us at no charge, and who help us with some of this work in the kitchen at 62 Carter Road, and again in the farm at 47. So we really have found it to kind of be integral to what we do.
Thank you.
I have a question. On your, Jason or Vinny, on your the Highwatch website, one of the things that you talk about is the Hope House Farm, which includes a horse and sheep pasture, horse stalls, and acres of gardens. And they're actively involved in the production of honey, beeswax, and other honey-based products, along with eggs, wool, and fresh produce. And that this farm will also be supplying the Highwatch kitchen with fresh vegetables and will stock the soon-to-open farm stand. So I guess your website is saying one thing, and the letter that you submitted is saying something else. And I would just like to understand what Hope House is and how this plays into the activity on 47 Carter Road.
Sure. So Hope House is actually what we call the property at 47 Carter Road. And as you know, there's a residence there. We have individuals who live in the residence that they are able to utilize what's called our intensive outpatient program, which we offer 3 days a week. So it's a continuation of their care. So that's what happened. And that's what we call our program at 47 Carter Road. We call it the Hope House. I'm embarrassed because the website is my responsibility. We don't have a farm stand, nor do we intend to. So thank you for checking on that. That needs to come off. I have no idea why it's there.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. One, Jason, I totally understand what you just said. But last month, it was said that there may end up being a farm stand. And it's obviously on your website, and you're stating clearly now that there will not, and there's no plan for there to be a website.
Yeah,
A farm stand, excuse me.
yeah. So, and I will reiterate that to make that very clear. There is no plan right now to have a farm stand. There is no farm stand there right now. I don't see a scenario where we would have a farm stand. Quite frankly, I know Vin had mentioned it only as an answer to a question last month, and then went out of his way to make clear that there was no farm stand or plan to have a farm stand. And again, I apologize, and I'm embarrassed that our website says that there will be at some point in time. There is no intention to do that.
So can I also ask, because what always concerns me, over the years, High Watch keeps expanding. It expands and expands. In my time on the commission, you guys have come before us with expansions, and it's always going to be the last one. This one is a very big expansion, not the greenhouse, but the across the street. And since then, there's been some modifications, and now a greenhouse. My concern is what I see is this ongoing expansion that just seems to never stop in what is supposed to be and used to be a residential rural area, and Carter Road is very quickly becoming not that. I think High Watch is great. I do. But what I see happening on the road into the neighborhood is High Watch is I don't know where your expansion stops. I don't know where you guys ever plan on ending. And that concerns me, because it's not supposed to happen in a residential area. So
Well,
I'd like to know what your plans are for the future, what you guys have discussed, where you guys think things are going.
Our plans are to build a 30 by 70 hoop house. That is the honest answer to your question. As you know, everything that we do and have done, we try to do to the best of our ability. And there may be some folks who've spoken who wouldn't agree, and I can appreciate their opinions. But everything we try to do in harmony with the neighborhood. We went through great effort and great expense, to be quite honest with you, to handle the additions at 62 Carter Road in a way that's aesthetically pleasing, consistent with the agricultural history of the road. That wasn't done by accident. That's done because we want to do our best to fit in on the street. We're quite frankly proud of what we're doing, and we do believe that it's an addition to the community that's congruous with what's there. And I'm respectful of the fact that there are residents on the street. I truly am. We were founded in 1939 when all of that was farms. And in fact, the property at 47 Carter Road at one point in time was owned by High Watch. It was sold off at one point in time, and we've simply purchased it back and want to include it into the program. So Commissioner, I think your question is very much on point. At what point is enough totally reasonable? And I guess my simple response would be that the commission gets a new bite at the apple anytime we suggest something else down the road.
I have a question, and I guess it's following up on Alice's question. And I think this issue is only relevant because it may turn on whether or not this whole issue has to go to the ZBA or whether we have it. It's unclear to me whether the hoop house is part of the therapy or not. you said earlier that there is agricultural therapy, and that would, I would assume, include the residents growing things in the hoop house. And yet your letter says the intention of this application for hoop house is not to expand our therapeutic work. So I guess I'd like clarification on, is this part of the therapy or not? Or are you saying we're not expanding our therapeutic use because we're already doing it?
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me do the best I can to answer that. The reason why we have come forward with this is not to expand our therapeutic use. It is to expand our ability to produce for our kitchen across the street. Now, the follow-up to that, and this may get to your question as well, there is nothing stopping us per se from having our guests work in the hoop house. So there's not a wall between the two, and at no point, and I'm just being honest, no point would anybody say, oh, you're a guest, you can't go in the hoop house. So it is conceivably possible that therapeutic work could be conducted in there. But that is not the goal. That's not the reason why we're here before you. The reason is simply because we want to be able to meet the needs of our kitchen across the street.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question.
Okay, Annie.
How many people live at Hope House?
We have 6. Vin, is that correct? 6 is the number. It's either 6 or 5.
6.
Thank you.
And that was, we approved that many residents when the structure was approved?
6 and Donna would know your regs certainly better than I do, but 6 is permitted in a residential structure. In fact, I believe it's a maximum of 6. I'm wrong? I see Donna shaking her head no. Feel free to correct me.
Yeah, they never came before us to allow anyone to be in that house. It is a residence. It's a residence. And if there are 6 people there who have gone through the program and are now still continuing the program, it could be considered a sober house. In which case, based on the Americans with Disabilities and the Fair Housing Act, we cannot regulate. The fire marshal gets involved if there are more than 6 people in that house, if it's a sober house. But there was never an application before us for residents of High Watch to live there once they had finished a portion of their program. Safe to
So
say.
there was an existing house on that property.
Yes.
And the application before us at the time was to operate a therapeutic use, which was an accessory to
Right.
the use at
62.
At 62. Thank you, Donna. Yes, it was an accessory to the primary use at 62. So
Right.
that, and is the crux, that's the crux of the discussion. As far as I'm concerned, it should be the crux of the discussion, whether the property at 42,
7.
right? 47 is
47.
an accessory, whether the use on that property, on that lot, is an accessory to the use at 54. Nope, at
62.
At 62, thank you. And that is going to inform my decision. And it sounds as if, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that the commission has approved that parcel the use on that parcel as accessory to the use at 62. So it's a very important question for me. And if somebody wants to jump in now, because that's where I'm going. So thank you, Ann. It's a great question.
Matt, may I say something? Oops,
Yes, Karen, go ahead.
Where'd she go?
I thought that Karen was wanting to speak, and I was speaking over her, so I'm going to be quiet, and maybe she can go off mute. And oh, you almost had it.
You're still on mute, Karen.
Okay.
There you go.
Am I on now? Okay, let me think what I was trying to say. So that's part of the reason why when this was presented to us about having a hoop house and a garden is how I looked at the hoop house. And being a farm stand lover myself, or a farm lover, let's not get into farm stand, you know, producing your own food and eating your own food is, I think, a terrific endeavor. And it is why I believe that they should be permitted to do this, because we already agreed that they could have that property as an accessory use to their facility. Furthermore, that property has always been, or in the last 10 or 15, 20 years, the previous owners had a mini farm there. So I thought it was very conducive for them to be able to use it as a hoop house and grow their own food. As far as the neighbors go, my heart hurts for them. I understand exactly how they feel. And I agree with Adam. I don't want to see any further expansion. And quite frankly, every time I get a planning and zoning agenda and High Watch is on there, I shriek. So in my opinion, I think we should allow the hoop house and tell them to stop at that for now.
Thank you, Karen. I think that's great. I think I'd like to hear more of that discussion after when we close the hearing, when we close the public hearing. So really what I'm working towards is to try to make sure that we have all the information that we need before I ask for a motion to close the public hearing, so that we as a commission can have some further discussions and hopefully make a determination as to whether we want to vote this month or whether we want to wait. I see that Mr. Altfest would like to say something, so I'll go on mute and open the floor to him. Lou, you're on mute still?
Sorry. What I hear now is like a political, almost like what we hear in the debates that go on and the practices, in which I think in part is being the person is being frank. No limit to expansion. That's what I hear. And I know that Kent has worked along with these people because they have, with High Watch, because they have a good benefit. However, there are we only have a few thousand people in this community. They're a major factor for the small town of Kent. They just take a few steps up. There are other towns that they can expand as a second site why load up Kent? It's enough. Let them go somewhere else. They have a good approach. They're destroying a neighborhood now. It's a different neighborhood than when they bought it. When they came in 1939, when there were no houses, now there are many houses. Somebody has to be firm with these people. If you're not firm, they're going to be back to you time and again, and they'll be well represented by legal people, and they'll continue what they do. So my point is, let's stop them now. Let them go somewhere else for their expansion and live happily ever after in Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Altfest. So I think we're winding down. Ellen, I see you want to say something. Do you want to make another comment? And
Really quick.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, just that, even if it is an approved use, and it is therapeutic, which she's not saying it is, it's still an expansion. So, again, is it whatever legal non-conforming is an expansion? I mean, I still think that hearing from the lawyer is very important to know if it's going to be kicked up to the zoning board of appeals, because any expansion is an expansion. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. Okay, so is there any other are there any other comments from the commissioners that would to recommend the not closing the public hearing at this point? Then I would look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
A second.
Is there any further discussion? Then I'll call the vote. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, so signify by saying aye, raising your hand. I've got all of the voting members. Karen, I don't see your I don't see your vote. So it's unanimous without you, so I think the motion carries anyway. But if you would like to weigh in, just unmute and let us know.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in favor of closing the public hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Karen. So the motion carries. Public hearing is now closed, and I'm going to move into the segment where the commissioners discuss the application, and I'll take the opportunity to start. And I will try not to rehash too many of the things that we've spoken about already. 47 Carter Road is a separate parcel, but should be listed on the land record, and I think it is, as an accessory, as the use on that property should be listed on the land records as accessory to the use at 62 Carter. 54 Carter, I mean, this is beside the point, but 54 Carter and 1480 and parcel number 1486 should also be treated the same way, that they are accessory uses to the High Watch program. The primary use is no longer permitted in the zoning regulations. Any expansion to that use is not permitted. So for me, the question is this proposed project an expansion of the use? There shall be no expansion of any use that's not permitted, of any pre-existing non-conforming use. And I know, so right now, what High Watch is their operation has been there for a really, really long time. And they were operating under our definition of a convalescent home. Not only convalescent home, but now we as a commission decided somewhat recently, within the recent past, that we thought that use was untenable, not for High Watch in particular, but in general in the rural zone. So any expansion to that use should not be allowed is not allowed by the zoning regulations, and any expansion to that use then would have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the question is this an expansion to the non-conforming use? Mr. Perlow has said that the operation at 47 Carter Road is integral to our operation. The letter that they sent indicates to me that it is a continuation of the use that we have approved there as an accessory to their use. Ms. Alfest asked if the attorney had weighed in, and the attorney did weigh in, and he weighed in, and he says it's a complicated question. He said that, let's see, that the property was once used as a farm and that High Watch acquired it in part to continue that use. It also sounds as though High Watch has maintained that use to at least a limited extent, even though it has added therapeutic uses. It also sounds as though High Watch has So although the proposed greenhouse would be used to produce food for the main facility, the use would actually be consistent with a farming use. And in that sense would be comparable to the agriculture uses allowed in the rural zone. So if it wasn't an accessory use, and even when that use was permitted by our regulations, it would have required a special permit, and we would have had to review it as a special permit, which is ultimately where the attorney says that we should go, that we should review it as a special permit.
Matt, can you say that again? That previous sentence?
Yes. Prior to the change in regulations, the use at 64 Carter Road, I'm going to condense it into convalescent home, was permitted by special permit. So any use, and that's why this is with us, because any use, any change of use, not change of use, any additional use, anything additional that High Watch wants to do, they have to come to us as a special permit. So we would have to go through this process no matter what. And so the attorney ultimately recommends somewhat tacitly that we as a commission hear this out and hash it out and make a determination one way or another, and not pass it on to the Zoning Board of Regulation, Zoning Board of Appeals. That's at least how I'm reading this. He goes on to say that, David, does that clarify it?
It clarifies it, yes. I'm not sure it explains anything.
I agreed. He also says that, if High Watch was simply tilling that land for, within the footprint of the hoop house, then we wouldn't be meeting. So it's simply the structure that's going up that we have issue with, and the complication of that structure on how much produce they can produce. He concludes by saying he thinks it's most reasonable to view the proposal as a potentially allowable intensification of a now non-conforming use. That doesn't make any sense to me, because we as a commission are not allowed to approve any intensification of a non-conforming use.
Matt, what is your understanding about an expansion of the use? Does that mean if they're doing more of the same, is that an expansion of the use? Or it's only, if they're doing a new use that we hadn't previously approved?
I think what he's saying is that as the regulations stand now, agriculture in the rural district is an approved use. Convalescent home and the therapeutic uses that go along with that are no longer an approved use in the residential rural zone. So if there was no therapeutic, this is my interpretation, and I'm not on the commission, it's just my interpretation, is that if there was no therapeutic use and they were just strictly growing the food to be used at 62 Carter Road, that is an agricultural use. The fact that they are now going to be growing in the hoop house as part of the therapeutic work that they're doing across the street, then that could be considered an intensification of a non-conforming use and therefore would require a ZBA approval or an application before ZBA. That's how I understand the email that he sent.
And that's, I absolutely agree. So it's up to the commission. Again, for me, the crux of it, and I think for all of us, it should be, but I don't want to speak for, so I'll make that slight pressure. But for me, the crux of the discussion is whether or not that parcel is, as a whole, the use of that property, is it an accessory or is it standalone?
Matt,
Yes, Alice.
when you say an accessory or a standalone, back to where I was before, I'm kind of hung up on the word therapeutic. A therapeutic use is not necessarily an agricultural use. They could show up and say, we think swimming is the best therapy for rehabilitation. So we need an Olympic-sized pool over here and we need it heated, and so if it's all about, if the extended use is the therapy, or I don't know, the word therapy throws the thing into infinite opportunities. I mean, they could say shooting rockets up in the sky at night is a therapeutic use. I mean, where does it stop? And is my point.
Absolutely, Allison, you're absolutely right. So let's look at very specifically the application when we approved that the therapeutic use for 47 Carter Road. The therapies at 47 Carter Road will be offered as part of the existing High Watch treatment plan, not as a standalone program. So to me that boxes this application into a corner. That it's that 47 Carter Road, and again, as an aside, also 54 and parcel number 1486 are accessory uses to 64, to 62. If I'm right, then we have to answer Mark's question. Is any change to what they're doing considered an expansion? I mean, is it a vertical or is it a lateral, or which was? I don't know. It seems to me an expansion of what they told us they were doing, which was a horse farm.
The horse farm was not an expansion of what they were doing across the street. It was a startup use.
Yeah, it was an accessory. It was still permitted by the regulations.
Yeah, by the for that property.
For,
agricultural.
yeah.
Okay.
Hold on, David, just one second. If that property were if that's what I mean by standalone. If that property wasn't associated with High Watch at all, which is a point that I made at the last meeting,
Yeah, right.
it's agricultural. It would be somebody saying on my property, I couldn't, I couldn't let somebody have an organic farm on the property. I couldn't organic farm on my property, and it's a farm. But because it's associated and accessory to, and we approved that use as accessory to something that's not allowed by the regulations anymore. I don't want to pass the buck, but that's where I'm leaning. So I'll shut up now. I took the first word. I'll try not to take the last word. So you guys all can, who wants to talk now?
I think one of the things that, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to get some clarity, and it's for you, Donna, probably, but when they came before us, when they bought this property and they were going to make it a horse farm, and the horse farm was for therapeutic use, we approved that so they can have their guests on the property to work with, feed, care for the horses. Is that correct?
Yes. So it's if you want to compare it to anything, you could compare it to the South Kent School. When the South Kent School bought the Arno Farm, determination was made that that Arno Farm would no longer be a farm first, but it would be an educational facility first, farm second. And that the farm is accessory to the South Kent School because the kids were going there for educational purposes. So a lot of things that would happen on the Arno Farm from an inland wetlands standpoint, where inland wetlands has farming exemptions, those exemptions would not apply to the South Kent School farm, because first and foremost, they are an educational facility. So I think that you can compare this to the same thing. It's an accessory use. It was determined when they did the horse farm, and when the rope course went up, it was determined that the principal use of that building at this point in time, or that property, 47 Carter Road, would be therapeutic to the parcel across the street, as known as 62.
And Donna, you said therapeutic, and I would say accessory.
Right. The therapy is a part of the convalescent use that they have across the street.
Okay, great, thanks. David, you had wanted to say something earlier?
Yeah, I was listening to it. It seems like if there's been a farming aspect to the therapeutic work as approved by the commission and kind of expected, a horse farm, and I guess there's been some amount of gardening, whether you call it therapeutic or not. It seems like the fact is there has been some aspect of farming going on here. And so when you do look at the as of right uses, which I agree, it sounds like have been ended because it's an accessory, the point is they still had the right to engage in an agricultural practice. So it just seems very difficult why you would want to say that putting a hoop house over a piece of the land that we're farming is problematic and that it's like an inappropriate intensification. It just seems like a fairly straightforward use that would fall within the existing expectation. Now, Alice's comments notwithstanding, if they wanted to put in the swimming pool, that's not as of right, nor is it part of the existing use. It would be, you'd have to say therapy in pools, hydrotherapy would be something new, or a rocket therapy. But the existing agricultural, therapeutic or not, it doesn't seem like it's an intensification as Matt would describe it, or that I would read into the approval based on what I've heard so far.
Well, what about the ropes course? Is that agricultural?
I don't know what was said when they put a ropes course in, and I have not reviewed that. I wouldn't personally call it agricultural. If they put permanent structures in, presumably they got some sort of zoning approval to bury posts or whatever they were existing.
That was done after the fact. They did not come before us to
Right.
get permission to make ropes course. They made the rope course and then came before us.
So it seems like you'd have a better argument saying that was an unplanned intensification than the
Right.
farm aspect. But we're not retroactively reviewing that one, are we?
I would I would say no,
Already
we're not
done and-
reviewing that. We
Okay.
went, and again, when we reviewed that, the primary use was still a permitted use in the zone. So it's, that's somewhat what we're have to navigate around, is that it's no longer a permitted use. But you all make some really good points.
Yeah, I guess the question is, does the zoning board want to be in the business of approving every possible thing that might go on there? I just don't, therapy is going to cover some amount of stuff. And then there's like going to be some line they cross that says, okay, you've gone too far and you should come here and ask for permission. So if they want to put up a building, and I guess they've been asked to do a special permit, but that seems like this feels like the kind of behavior we should at least be acknowledging as the correct behavior versus coming after the fact, where we might have said, no, take it all out because it wasn't an approved expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I think that I don't disagree with anything you said, David. I don't really disagree at all with the use. We have a right to farm rule, and the issue here is that there's been this ongoing for many years continuing intensification of the use on the property and the expansion of the property. And that intensification has affected the neighbors adversely. And it's affected them a lot. So on one hand, this is nothing. It's just a greenhouse. And they'll grow food to use to feed everybody. And I think that's great. I'm all for that idea, that concept, but just, it's just a further expansion and intensification. And at some point we have to stop that from happening. At some point, all this is it's about everybody else who lives on Carter Road, and that it's a residential area and it's not a commercial area. So I think for me, that's the big issue here, because on one hand, I think this is a nothing thing, except that it is a further intensification and expansion onto a property across the street.
I really agree with David. It seems to me, if this was, I understand that it is a further development at the property. And if this development increased the traffic on Carter Road, increased the number of people there, increased the number of workers there, increased the number of people driving there, I would be opposed to it. And if they were going to have a food stand there, I would be opposed to it. But this hoop house is none of that. It also sounds to me as though Mike said, this is just a continuation of a pre-existing use of farming, and that on that basis, it could be approved. To the extent that it's a continuation of the therapy that's done across the street, I think it can be approved. It's not an expansion of the therapy, it's a continuation of the therapy. And as far as this farming being accessory to the main building, I don't see what could be more accessory than producing food to be eaten at the main building. to me is clearly an accessory use. So that's where I am.
I just respond to one thing you said there, which I think helps highlight it. You mentioned the farm stand. I do think that a farm stand would be what I would say an intensification that would require approval because it's clearly different than the existing agricultural use. So if we're looking for an example, what our lawyer might have been referring to, I think that would be an excellent case where I think it would be a clear need for it to go to the zoning board of appeals. Sorry.
So just to be clear, we would have to deem this as a non-intensification of a pre-existing non-conforming use. Because if we looked at it a different way, then a farm stand would be permitted by right.
Well, didn't we say that the rights of the property, any new rights that would have been included with it, are now subordinated by the therapeutic use? They don't exist anymore unless they were already part of it. That's why I don't think the other rights apply anymore. So farm stands called out specifically in a different line in the rural zoning regs, whereas kind of the existing agricultural growing of food does not. And if they switched from, say, horses to alpaca therapy, like I don't think I would say that requires a special permit either, right? It's like an existing thing they're doing. Whereas if they want to go from a horse ring and they want to do a horse racetrack, I think that would be a clear intensification. It's like a different thing now.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that, David. I just want to be eyes wide open and clear that that parcel carries with it the label as accessory to 64, and we're not saying that the right to farm, or that anybody's right to farm, anybody's right to produce something on their property supersedes the accessory use to the convalescent home, because for me it's a fine point, and if we agree that this is a lateral move, it's not a vertical move. It's a lateral move. It's not going from however many horses they told us they were going to have in their first application to double that number of horses, or from keeping the same number of horses and adding alpacas, as you suggest, which would increase the intensity of the operation. If they switched from 4 horses to 4 alpacas, I think you're absolutely right. If they switched from keeping bees to growing tomatoes, I think that's all lateral. For me, the biggest thing is the use of the land, and that's the biggest question. And it sounds like you and Mark and somewhat Alice are answering the question that it's, if we agree with me that it's an accessory use. It sounds like you and Mark and maybe Alice a little bit, and certainly Karen, are saying that it's not an intensification of the use at all. So, does anybody else have any?
The one thing I would like to confirm, maybe Donna can, the original accessory that was approved related to this, did it have very specific language about anything, the agricultural farming pieces that were continuing, as in gardening, or did it just say the only thing you're ever going to have here is horse therapy? Or was it just kind of didn't really say anything?
It was specific to that particular use. I don't have the resolutions with me. I didn't bring the entire file because I'm home. But I'd have to look and see specifically what the resolution of approval came up with for 47. So, and Jason has his hand raised.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
If the commission would permit, I appreciate it.
We can't.
Um,
Oh, excuse me. We can't. We've closed.
Oh,
We've closed.
You're right.
We cannot hear from the public. I'm sorry, Jason. You can't speak. I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry, Adam, you're right. My mistake. I don't know where you guys want to go from for now. I don't know if you want, I do not have any resolutions prepared. So, you know, I mean, we could postpone it until the next meeting where I would come back with resolutions of both approval and denial.
I'd like to say one thing that they are selling the honey on their website. So it is, you know, they're kind of tiptoeing over the line. And, you know, I actually came in to the meeting thinking, you know, it's just farming, it's just a greenhouse, nobody sees it. But after listening to Ellen, I mean, she said it, expansion is expansion. And, you know, maybe it's time to say no.
The problem is that we've already given them the accessory use. So, and the fact that the property pre-existed as a maybe hobby farm. I think that's how I'm looking at it and why we should permit them to have the hoop house. Just a thought.
So would, that brings up a great question, Karen. Does, how much weight should a previous use of a property be applied to our decisions on I don't want to say future use, and I don't want to say expanded either, but it's, you know, some other use. So it was a hobby farm, and then High Watch bought it, or it's High Watch apparently, it's according to into the testimony tonight, that High Watch once owned it and they sold it and they bought it back. And in the meantime, in the interim, it was a farm. It was agricultural use, and then we changed the use to accessory to 64 Carter. So should the previous use inform our decision? And it's just a question. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Well, I do, but it's just a question.
Well, I think the previous use matches their current application for continued use of farm type endeavors.
Okay, so does the commission feel, I mean, the public hearing is closed, and thanks, Adam, for you know, preventing us from going down the wrong road. Does the commission feel that this is something that we should rule on as part of a special permit, or should we refer this application to the ZBA? And is that a question that we should answer tonight? I'm leaning towards continuing this, tabling this discussion until our next meeting, as Donna suggests, to hear, to discuss the resolutions of approval and denial that she will prepare between now and then. But can we make a decision tonight regarding whether we should hear this or whether we should refer to the ZBA?
Can I ask a question? I thought to go to the ZBA, you go when we deny. We don't, Donna, I mean, we don't refer to somebody to the ZBA. unless their use is
Not
unless
permitted.
they're trying is not permitted, or they're doing something that falls outside of regulation somewhat. But I thought we had to deny something, and then if we deny it, they go to the zoning board of appeals.
No, I mean, so certainly that's one way to do it. But the other way to do it is to simply say this is not allowed by the regulations and we can't hear it.
Right. That's what you need to do. If you guys deny this, then the course of action for the applicant would be to go to the Superior Court and not to ZBA. The applicant could only go to ZBA and appeal my decision. So the only way that they can appeal your decision is to go to the Superior Court. You can make the ruling that after hearing this, that you've decided that it should be heard by ZBA and refer it to them. And that would be what the denial would contain. So the denial of the resolution of denial, Ty's shaking her head no. The resolution of denial would say that, you know, at this point in time, the Planning and Zoning Commission has not made a determination and is referring it to the Zoning Board of Appeals because they feel that this is an intensification of the accessory use associated with the main principal use located at 62 Carter Road.
And I think then based on that logic, Donna, it wouldn't be a denial. It shouldn't be a denial. It should just
Right.
be
A referral.
The referral. We as a commission have decided that this is a use that doesn't fit within the regulations, and therefore we can't hear it.
Right.
So
Yes, that's right.
We got two questions. Are we going to hear it, or we're not going to hear it? And if we hear it, then we should discuss whether we're going to approve or deny it. So my question, can we answer that question tonight? Should we hear it?
So for as much as I feel like we need to put on brakes with High Watch or with their expansion, I feel like the intensified use of building this greenhouse is really minimal. I mean, they have people there anyway to help care for the horses. And if they walk 100 feet further and they fill some pots or, you know, however it is they're growing inside that greenhouse, the further intensity is so microscopic. I feel like sending it to the ZBA is passing the buck.
I agree with you, Adam. I agree with you. I think what we should do as a commission is perhaps table this for one more month and come back next month with our decision. I think we're wimping out by sending it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think we can handle this.
Alice?
I would agree we should put this off till the next meeting. I'd like to review the resolution that we did for the horse. What exactly we have said before. I don't feel comfortable just saying yes right now until I see how we resolve those other uses of that property. But I don't think that we need to push it over to ZBA either. So I just need a little better information to know how we're going to write a resolution, denial or otherwise.
Okay. Annie?
I don't think it needs to go to ZBA. I think
Okay.
we can handle this and just table it till next month. Like Alice said, look at the resolution and make a decision.
Fine. David and Mark, I think that you guys have both weighed in that's, if I can put words in your mouth, that we don't need, that we should hear this, and it's less of a lateral move. It's more of a lateral move than a vertical expansion, and it doesn't need to go to ZBA as an enhancement of a pre-existing non-conforming use. David's giving me the thumbs up. Mark, are you on board with that?
Yes, I agree with that. And although, in my opinion, I think we could vote on this tonight, but I don't really have any objection to putting it off for a month because I'd like to see Mike's letter. Tell you the truth.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with that. So we just got Mike's letter tonight. The letter was somewhat between Donna and Mike, and we're going to reach out to Mike, and Mike is going to forward that letter to Donna more formally than he has already, and we'll have a chance to review that before the next meeting. Okay, then I'm gonna look for a motion to table this discussion until the next meeting, where Donna will one, provide us with a more formal response from our attorney. 2 and 3, provide us with a draft resolution of approval and denial, and then we can hash it out in November.
Matt, can Donna also provide us with the approval, the resolution of approval that we did already for the horse therapy, the horse farm?
Yeah, I'll send that resolution for 47.
Thank you. So I'll make that motion that we table or continue this next month.
Okay. And without any further discussion, I'll call the vote and say all those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Like it is unanimous. Okay, so thank you everybody again for your patience. We'll have one more meeting to review this. I truly understand and appreciate everybody's comments and concerns, and again, I'm somewhat humbled by everybody's patience and willingness to speak honestly and openly. So thank you all. I'm going to move on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So not to be. The next item on the agenda is 5B1, which is going to be very short because this is the planning schedule for the rewrite of the subdivision regulations, and the chairman of our subcommittee has recused himself for the evening, and he's also said he doesn't want to do anything with this until after we can start meeting in person. So I'm gonna table that, Donna, until the next meeting. I think we should keep it on the agenda.
Yep.
Which brings us squarely back into agenda item 6B1.
Yeah.
Which is, and bear with me as I read.
Matt?
Yes, Donna?
I know Sharon's been hanging out, and I don't know how long the discussion is going to be for 6B1. I was wondering if it might be permissible to move 6B2 up.
That's of course, Sharon. You've been very patient, and Mr. Perlow is nodding his head. So yes. Can I have a motion to move?
Moved.
Seconded.
6B2 to hear 6B2 before 6B1.
I make that motion.
I second it.
Okay, great. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Motion carries. Okay. All right, thanks. And sorry, Sharon, I should have recognized you beforehand. So let's go. This is agenda item 6B2, which is the temporary modification to application number 11-16C, 45 North Main Street, map 19, block 15, lot 14, Kent Coffee and Chocolate for Kevin Hart and Quarter Mile LLC, modification to allow drive-through window during COVID-19 pandemic. I am 6B2. I'm going to open the floor to Donna, and
Okay.
then we'll hear from the applicant.
Okay. Basically, if you remember, we did allow Sharon to keep to open up the drive-through window when COVID first hit, when it was too cold to have tables and everything outside. So the windows were open, and then when they reopened the stores and allowed people to congregate outside, she followed our direction and did close that window back up again. But now that we are farther into COVID-19 and doesn't look like anything is going to be closing up or ending soon, and things have been extended, Sharon had contacted me to ask me if she could then again start doing the windows, because people aren't going to want to be getting out of their cars to come inside and get nice hot cups of coffee and hot chocolate and that kind of thing. So, so she is here before you to talk about that and the reasoning, and to talk about some of the things that she's already tried to do on the inside of the store. But with the spike in cases, you know, it's a small space, and it's not necessarily conducive, and people are not necessarily feeling comfortable going into the store. So I'll let Sharon unmute herself, and then she can go ahead and explain the rationale behind her request.
Hi, everyone. Basically, it's what Donna said. We're certainly not the smallest store in town, but we're not a huge space. We have very little seating from the get-go. And in the initial portion of COVID, no seating was allowed. And then it was moved to 50%, which for us would have been 7 seats. Most people were not comfortable. And given that the highest transmission rate of COVID right now is restaurants and any kind of, and coffee shops specifically named, I think people are very uncomfortable about coming in and sitting down. Not to mention that we don't have enough space to have tables with the required barriers from the state of Connecticut, which would only allow us to seat approximately 6.5 people anyway, or 7.5 people. So we want to have access for the drive-up window again during these cold months, so that we can, you know, we can basically stay in business. There would be a difference though. From March till July, we did not have people coming in the store. We were drive-up only. So I think this is an important clarification. During this period of time, people would still be able to come in the store, but only 3 at a time, which keeps within the regulations. You're only allowed to have 3 people in our store with our square footage at a time. And then the drive-up would still be able to be used. And that's basically it.
Sharon, I have a question, because this is what my greatest concern with the drive-up window is, that people use it also as a walk-up, and it just is so dangerous. So, you know, I think I want all businesses to get through this, but I think you need to say it's either a walk-up or a drive-up. I don't think it should be both.
Well, we had it as both during this entire time, and we never had an issue or any kind of a problem. It certainly isn't the best solution, and we did not appreciate people walking up to the window. But it's tough to discourage it, especially in this kind of a situation. But I think the reason people walked up to the window was because the store wasn't open. In this particular case, the store is open, and I would be very happy to put a sign up or something that says drive up only.
I think that definitely has to be done.
Yeah, I mean, during the time
for your own protection.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And like I said, this happened a lot and there wasn't really much we could do about it because the store wasn't open. So people were walking around town, maybe had parked down at Kingsley and had lunch, and then they were wandering around town and then came to the store and wanted to partake. And the only way they could do it was to walk up to the window. So that's what happened. And everyone was great about leaving great distances, and everyone behaved I shouldn't say everyone, almost everyone behaved very well. We had very few serious problems. And like I said, in this particular case, we're open on the inside now. So there's no reason for someone to walk up to that window. And I think there should be signage to make it clear that that's not appropriate.
This is denominated a temporary modification. How long is temporary? Until Connecticut says you can have 100% capacity back inside?
I don't know what's happening with the state of Connecticut. I think today I saw an announcement that you could go to 70% or 75%. I kind of heard it peripherally, so I may be just saying something that I heard reported even in another state, but I thought it was Connecticut. Most of our customers, we receive emails, we receive information on Instagram. Most of our customers, like many customers in town, are uncomfortable sitting inside or doing anything inside at this point. And with the statistics that have been posted and have been on the news recently that specifically state restaurants are the #1 transmission, with coffee shops and gyms as number 2 and 3 for COVID, people have become even more uncomfortable about sitting inside. They want to get something and go. They don't want to be in sharing all that air. So I'm not sure that in the winter time where we don't have the windows open and things like that, that people are going to want to come in and sit anyway. I think that people feel safe and comfortable in their car driving through or coming in. Like I said, we're allowed to have 3 people in the store. By the nature of the way our store is laid out, the 6-foot restrictions, the fact that we can't have people waiting for something like a latte being made, they can't stand off to the side for us to move the line or wait on someone else. They have to stay in that position. We can only wait on 3 people at a time. So that has vastly changed the face of our business, as anyone who's ever been in our store, especially on a weekend, knows that 3 people allowed in the store is a big change for Kent Coffee and Chocolate.
So are you not allowed to have any, I know there's a seating there. You're not allowed to have anybody sitting in those in
No.
your.
No, we were not allowed to have anyone sitting in there until July. And I think it was even after July. You were allowed to have 50% of your seating. Okay, which for us would have been 7.5 people. And there was no way, because we have a bench, there's no way to separate those people. The rule is that when your tables are seated, the people that are like, here's one chair, here's another chair, the space in between the people seated, not the empty chair, has to be 6 feet or over. And by the nature of our floor plan, there's no way for us to accomplish that. We actually pulled the whole store apart for a couple days and tried to reconfigure how we could possibly do tables. But even that doesn't resolve our issue of only being allowed to have 3 people in line in the store at any given time. Hasn't been too big of an issue during the summer because the line has just gone out the door. I don't know if you've ever been in the back and seen the line maze that we put up for people to stay out of traffic, so that the line, when it does get really long out the door, has a horseshoe. I just call it a maze kind of thing that's out there that people walk through. It takes up 3 parking spaces in the back. So we won't have that anymore because it's going to be snowing and icy and windy, and who's going to stand outside for an hour is what it's been for your coffee, because it takes so long.
So answer me this question.
I'll try.
This is, sorry for that ridiculous preamble, but Donna wrote a letter saying that we that you were allowed to have the drive-through up until a certain date, right? And I think that date was the end of June, and then we extended that date until the end of July. But the
No.
okay, so what was it?
The extension, the temporary permit was to allow us to stay with our drive-up functioning until the state of Connecticut opened up. The state of Connecticut opened up on the 25th. We were not able to get our acrylic and comply with the state of Connecticut requirement until a couple days later. So we asked if we would be allowed to just have a few days extension until we get the acrylic. We opened on July 4th, which was just, a very short time after the June 25th. And the second we opened the door, we closed the drive up, and we have not opened it since.
Okay, so that's my question. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but an express condition of that was that you would restore the drive-through to its previous condition when
It is. It was a walk-up.
Yeah, but again, I think that there were barricades to driving up. You had those
Planters.
Planters, yeah, the woods and
Yeah.
water, right? So the planters, and they were put in there. They were filled with dirt, and they were somewhat, and they were temporary, but they were somewhat permanent, right? And
They
those
get
never.
hit pretty hard, and people have hit them pretty hard. Yeah,
But
it's tough to move.
they didn't go back, right?
No, they
they
haven't gone back. We put construction barrier tape there. We put cones there, and we put I don't know what you call it, snow fencing.
Sure, which are
Around
all temporary, which are all temporary measures to something. My only comment, my only point is that the commission, the commission had some requirements for you when you were able to, when we wanted you to stop using it as a drive up.
And we did.
You
We
put some
complied
tape
with
up,
that.
and you put some snow fence up, and you put some cones up, which are all temporary measures, which weren't really restoring it to what it was beforehand. And I just wonder.
But
why not?
the planters were not required in the first place. Those were just put up as a decorative measure.
No. I'm sorry, but no. Sorry. So the drive-through was blocked off because we wanted you to block off the drive-through, and the drive-through was not restored to. And whether or not, whether, which we don't have to argue about that, but the express conditions of that letter were that at the end of it, that it would be restored to where it was prior to this condition.
I don't have the letter, so I don't know what it said. I'm certainly going to believe you because you guys wrote it. I did not think I was creating any kind of an issue or not complying with what you asked by what we did, and that was not my intention. And if this had been made clear to me at any time, I would have corrected it. It's just not easy to move those tubs at all.
I know, and that's the point, I think.
And
for me.
getting someone to move the tubs. One of our customers did it for us the first time, and he just wasn't available to do it. And then we all just sort of left the tubs where they are because the tubs are protecting additional seating. I shouldn't say additional seating, spread out seating in the front of the store. Because of COVID, we had to separate our tables. We couldn't leave our tables where they were in the front of the store. So we also had asked if you guys minded if we separated our seating out so that they would all have the 6-foot requirements, but we'd have to move it all the way across the front of the store. So we had to move those tubs across that area because of traffic. So that's what we did.
Okay, that's the comment that I wanted to make.
I'm sorry about that. If I had known that was a condition or understood it, I would have complied immediately. I've never not complied with anything you guys have asked.
Okay, so Lamont has extended the state of emergency, for the lack of a better word, until, he signed orders to February 9th of 2021.
Yeah, all right, I didn't get that one yet.
Yeah, which is, so he extended out until then. And the new order that came in to allow the phase 3 reopening rules is 75% capacity inside.
With barriers.
Yes, and yeah, I mean 75%, but you still have to apply to apply with or comply with the 6-foot distancing.
And a
So,
barrier.
and right, with the barriers and all that. So even though you're allowed to have 75% of your seating, if you can't set up your restaurant or your shop to do that, then you don't get the 75%. You get what you can. You get what you can set up for. So, I mean, if you want, you can extend the opening, you know, of the drive-through window until February 9th. And then see where it goes after that, which is what we had been doing in the past.
So I think I'm all for business, and I think it's a reasonable request. Certainly it's, the more we can attract people into the town of Kent, the better off we're going to be. What does this mean for us as a commission for other businesses? I mean, there's not too many other businesses in town that can manage a drive-through.
Right.
So it's Kent Coffee and Chocolate. It's the bank across the street. It's
Union Savings Bank.
The old bank, right? That's is probably going to be serving liquor through a drive-through.
No, I think he's going to close that.
Yeah, but he doesn't have that road pass through anymore. But Union Savings does.
Right.
Yeah. So, but my only thought is, what does that mean? We've had requests from other businesses, and we've said, that's really not that safe, and I think we have to apply the rules evenly across the board. So if we vote to continue this until some future date, I just want to be clear. I just want to be on the same page with the balance of the commissioners that we should be willing to make the same concessions to other business owners in town.
I think that's a great point, Matt, because with winter coming, people are going to be thinking about creative ways to stay in business. And I think we have to be fair to everybody.
Well, I think that we have been. We had one business that came to us and wanted to cut a hole in the door, but he wanted to cut a hole in the door on a major drive-through where there was traffic coming in both ways and blind corners and people walking. So I think we have been, for the most part. I know I've not really been enforcing things that I see now, because I understand that it's a tough time for everybody. So I don't see anything with it. I know when the winter time comes, Sharon does reduce her operating hours. You're not open as late. Isn't that right? Your hours
we never extended our hours this summer. There just wasn't enough business to do it.
So what are your hours now?
We close at 6 p.m. now. Normally we would be open till 8 during the week and 9 o'clock on the weekends this time of year. And the same with all summer, but we never stayed open past 6.
So just to remind everybody, last time we discussed this, we discussed also the evenness or fairness. And Sharon has a building that has a drive-through that's built in, period. I don't think fairness falls in our here. I mean, if another business has a place that they can do this and they want to come before us and we think that it's safe, then fine. And if another business wants to do it, but they don't have a safe place to do it, like the application that we had denied, then we have to deny it. And this is such a, this building was built with this drive-through. It was always meant to be a drive-through.
But it's not allowed. I mean, a drive-through is allowed for banks. A drive-through isn't allowed for retail. So we have to start by understanding that this isn't allowed and it's a concession. So we're approving something that's not allowed.
I agree. I do understand that, Matt. But I think we're in a different time right now, and I think with COVID and the issues around it, and I think we have to be a little more open to allowing something like this that can enable a business to stay in business. That doesn't mean that we allow a business who wants to have a drive-through to open a drive-through in a place that is dangerous. You know, I think each application has to be taken for each application, and we're not extending these temporary permissions past the COVID time, or at least not right now, because it is not allowed. Nobody's allowed to have a drive-through.
Okay, go ahead, Sharon.
I don't know if these are two separate things, but is it time for the town to look at the regulation to allow drive-throughs? And I don't even know what's involved in that. I may be like opening a Pandora's box or saying something that's completely inappropriate, but I'm just asking.
Yeah, that would require a change in the regulation. And there's certainly people who have said that we should change the regulation. And there's certainly other people who have said that we definitely should not change the regulation. So it's a fair question.
With anything, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's a fair question, and we're always willing to hear from the public, right? We're always willing to hear petitions to change the regulation.
Matt, this is Alice.
Yeah.
The old slippery slope is ringing high and loud in my ears because if you look at the allowed drive-throughs, you can see a very similar structure on the footprint of the property and the boundaries of the property. The applicant that we had that we denied, I don't remember if we even had to deny it, but clearly it looked a very unsafe thing. But in the eyes of the owner of that property, and he's going to go out of business in the winter, he's been able to sit people outside. So that sort of eased the thing, it kind of went away. We better be prepared for a whole lot of people to start giving us some very unusual applications if we let this open up again. So we better be pretty careful. Well, this was a drive-through, so it can be. And well, yours is unsafe, but this one is safe. Based on what? Have we measured the distance? Is it, I'm just saying this is really opening up a lot of worms, because you look around town, I'm sitting here visioning, the Chinese restaurant will figure out a way to, have a drive-through there. I mean, it's not just going to be, if we do this, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but we better be prepared for how we're going to handle all the other people, because Sharon makes a very good point that people are still not happy going inside. And when it gets cold, they're not going to sit outside. So where is the merchant? How's he going to keep his customers happy as we go into the winter months? So I just think we better be prepared to do some serious homework on what's safe and what's not safe.
Can I comment?
Yes.
I think we have, I mean, we all know who we're talking about, who was declined, who wanted to do a drive up. And I think that was a situation where the drive up would have been actually on someone else's property.
Right.
They had done on the site. So that obviously is a big issue. For us, for those businesses and several other businesses in town that with winter coming, those businesses do a tremendous amount of delivery in town to the private schools and are extremely busy during the winter without any foot traffic whatsoever. And I'm not saying that's here nor there or a reason that I should get preference and someone else might not. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is I don't have that kind of delivery business. We don't sell that kind of product. We're not a restaurant. We're a treat. We're dessert. We're a secondary thing other than coffee, who many people would consider the most important thing in their day. But we don't deliver meals, and we don't deliver 500 pizzas in a day. We just don't do that. So foot traffic in the winter dies off for us very, very strongly. Foot traffic from the schools has always been very strong in the winter, but this year the students are not allowed to leave campus, which has had grave consequences for us and for other businesses in town. But a lot of those businesses are just doing tremendous amounts of delivery and have all hired delivery people and have staff for delivery that they've never had before. But we're not able to do that. We don't do that.
But you could do that with chocolate and coffee.
Can't really deliver ice cream sundaes, and it's, for us to deliver 2 coffees for $3 is a lot different than delivering 200 pizzas.
Yes, and I think that the business model discussion is an important one, but it's somewhat outside of the
Exactly. That's why I said it. I'm not saying that it's swaying one way or the other, but it's part of it for me. That's all.
Yeah, and yes, I'm cognizant of the fact that we are in this extended period that none of us could have anticipated. Certainly not in January, and I certainly didn't anticipate even as late as June. So I understand that it's yeah. My purpose here is to apply the spirit of the regulations evenly, and I think I've made my point with the commissioners, and I think the commissioners, we're all somewhat on the same page that we should be applying the leniency across the board. So if I could push this along, then I would look for some kind of a motion from a motion, not emotion, a motion from one of the commissioners.
I'll make a motion that we accept the application to extend the ability for Sharon to have a drive-through during this time of COVID, at least until it's over, hopefully sooner than later.
I hope so.
Second?
I would second it, but I would only I'd support what Donna said before about extending it to the date in February. I mean, until COVID is over, it could be never.
I have a question. I agree with that. Do we want to, so come February, if the governor extends things until April, can we enable Donna to extend this permission, this special permission that we're giving for the drive-through until whatever that next date is that the governor has specified, or do we want to have Sharon come back in and look at this again? It won't be warm outside, it'll still be cold, and we could give Donna the permission to extend it only as far as the time that whatever the governor has said.
I would like for her to come back because we don't know what the circumstances are going to be, Adam.
Okay.
Even if can I just interrupt? Even if the governor said it was going to go for another year, we would really only need it until it warmed up.
Right.
Go ahead, Karen. All right, I'll jump in. I agree with Annie. I agree. I think it should be, and Mark, conversely, I think that, not conversely, but I think that Mark, we should have a date, and then we should extend the date, eyes wide open.
But then let's make the date not, I think the date that the governor said is a Tuesday. Is that correct? And I'm just pulling it up. The Thursday following that is our meeting. So let's make it that way, because Sharon, we're putting her in a position where she can't come before us before she would have to stop using it. So our meeting in February is on February 11th. So why don't we choose February 11th as the date, and if COVID is still going on, then Sharon will come before us and won't be out of compliance or being forced to not use the drive-through for 2 days.
Great. So that's a modification to the motion. And Mark, you accept that modification as a second?
I do.
Great. Then the only, it's moving into discussion. The only comment that I would make is that at the end of this, and I believe the language is in the letter already, but if not, let's make sure that it is, that the drive-through is converted back to, converted back to the condition that it was prior to, which includes the planters being placed as barriers to the drive-through.
I agree with that.
I would call it additional planters because I plan on leaving the planters that were moved in front to protect the spread out seating. So they would have to be.
If it's a different planter, I don't think we care. We want something blocking the ability for cars to be able to drive through.
I totally get what you're saying.
Great. Anybody else on the commission have anything to say before we vote? Then there's a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and saying aye. And I see everybody but Karen and Alice. And Alice, I will, all those opposed? And all those abstaining. Okay, so Alice abstains. And Karen?
I agree with the motion.
Great. Okay, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Alice. Thanks all. The motion carries. Thank you, Sharon, for being patient with us through the first part of this.
I enjoyed it very much. I did. I really did. And also, I want to make sure that you guys know I'm agreeing that the walk-up window will not be used as a walk-up at all during any of this time. Okay.
Good. Okay.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.
Thank
All
you,
right,
everyone.
so let's call let's call the Highwatch folks back to the table and begin to discuss 6B1, which is the modification to application number 106-18SP and 107-18C by Highwatch Recovery Center.
Much as I love to hear your voice, can I just suggest there's no reason that you have to read the whole application. It's on the public record. You can just call it 6B1.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I know you've asked me to do that before, but I'm embracing it tonight. Okay, so this is application number 6B1. I will open up the floor to our land use administrator, Ms. Donna, who will tell us about what she thinks, and then we will hear from the applicant.
Okay, so as you can see in the bolded on the agenda, those are the proposed modifications to the approved site plan. As the land use administrator, I do have the right to approve minor modifications. But I have chosen not to do that and have chosen to go ahead and refer this to the commission. So the commission has the opportunity to review this now just as a regular application, or after reviewing what the changes are, they can make the determination that this should go to a public hearing for public comment. So that's really the first thing that you guys will need to decide. I know that Mike Doherty is on from Malone and McBroom, and he can go ahead and talk about it. But it's basically changes to the sidewalks that lead up to and are around Bantle Hall, which is the dining hall. Originally, the commission had agreed with the site plan that it would be just blacktop. They're changing that. They're changing the size, the configurations. They're adding a little patio on the south side of Bantle Hall, which is opposite the interior fireplace. They wanted to make that patio area just a little bit bigger. They're extending the walkway from one of the dorms. People were actually climbing up onto the grass, and during the winter time, it was posing a slip hazard in the winter icy weathers. And then one of the other changes that are coming in, and I don't have enough knowledge to understand, is that there was at one point in time a 10-foot high wall that had been approved, and now that the proposal is to take that 10 feet high wall and convert it into 2 5-foot tall tiered walls instead. So I guess Mike can actually talk a little bit more about the actual engineering of that. I can't address too. So that's my interpretation from conversations that I've had with Mike. And so I don't know if I turn it over to Mike or Jason, whoever wants to go first.
Donna, thanks. Jason Perillo from High Watch, obviously joined by Mike Doherty. Vin Roberti from High Watch is on as well. Just to sort of walk you through, would you mind, Donna, allowing me to share my screen?
No, go ahead.
Let us try and do that. How are we doing? Does that work?
Good. Yeah.
Okay. So back to Donna's point. So there's primarily 2 sections where, and as you can see at the top of your screen is Carter Road. Bantle Hall is to the lower right, and that area in the red box is what we're going to be talking about in terms of the sidewalks. Then as you move to the upper left is where we're going to discuss those 2 5-foot tiered walls. And I'm probably going to defer to Mike on a lot of that because it's more engineering in its nature. But first, let's talk about the sidewalks. As I said, that's over near Bantle Hall, and we've done a couple of different things there. The sidewalk, the main sidewalk running from the main entrance to Bantle Hall towards the access road, we are widening that to 10 feet. And then from the end of that, and Donna had mentioned, we get a lot of people walking from Bantle Hall through the grass directly to Steel Hall. It's a little bit of a slope there. It's a little bit unsafe. We wanted to try and make that a little bit safer. So we're extending the sidewalk along the existing access road that'll get folks over to Steel Hall without having to go down that sort of treacherous, what can become muddy / snowy depending on the time of year. And then sort of towards the bottom of this picture here, Donna mentioned sort of expanding a bit of a patio there at the end of Bantle Hall. There's an area there that was supposed to be grass that is proposed to be filled in with the new surface, and the walkway from that area also to the access road has just been shifted very slightly. In fact, it was shifted away from the septic, which sort of improves that situation. It wasn't a problem to begin with, but it does improve it. And to the point that Donna made, as well as it pertains to the sidewalks, those were originally supposed to be asphalt, and they are now proposed to be bluestone and heated, which sort of permits us not to have to use salt. It just makes them generally safer overall, less manpower to have to keep those clear for folks. So that's what we're talking about in terms of the sidewalks. And we obviously get to questions after I sort of run through everything. But one other component here is a roof overhang at Bantle Hall. The overhang was originally proposed to run down the center of Bantle Hall and then start again on the side of Bantle Hall. It left a 17.5-foot stretch that was just not covered from the elements. And it's like anything else, sometimes, and Mr. Chairman, you've mentioned this in the past, you get out there and you look at the project, you say, heck, why don't we do that? So it just simply links the two, the one overhang from the front and one overhang from the side. And again, it's just 17 feet. And again, none of this is visible from the road at all. And then the final component that we can discuss here, and I'll turn this over to Mike Doherty from MMI, is that tiered wall. As Donna mentioned, it was originally supposed to be a single 10-foot wall. We're proposing to make it 2 5-foot walls with 10 feet in between the two, so that we can insert landscaping to sort of buffer that out a little bit and make it a little less harsh. Yeah, that veneer is going to stay. We're still going to be a stone veneer wall. We're not getting rid of that, but we did want to be able to introduce some vegetation there to make it just a little bit more pleasing. And Mike, please add to that because you know a lot more about this than I do.
Sure. Thanks, Jason. For the record, Mike Doherty, landscape architect with Mylone McBroom. I think, Jay, you covered it pretty well. The only other thing that I would add is, so the wall itself, the lower tiered wall would stay in the exact same location as the previously approved 10-foot wall. And then we're kicking back for that new wall that's would be the 5 feet and would have the safety fence, steel picket fence on top of that. And the real reason we started to look at this in a little more detail was as the buildings are getting built and you're looking from the Jackman building down, and we're envisioning the windows in the conference room building and the foyer there looking out into this space. We really felt that the 10-foot wall was going to create more of an alleyway effect to the area. So we would like to do this change so that you have this more stepped view outside the new building. And again, we could buffer it with vegetation and just kind of soften the whole area from above and from below. I think that, I mean, I could certainly answer any questions, but that was really the main aesthetic reason to do that. And just the wall itself, again, will be constructed the same way as all the other concrete veneered walls on site.
And we don't really have much to add besides that. Everything's sort of simple, to be quite honest.
So, Mike, I have a question. I seem to, I remember, and I'm sorry, but I can't quite put my finger on an earlier change where we modified a different retaining wall. Was that the retaining wall that was all the way towards the west, where at the bottom side of the parking lot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the third wall that we've looked at on site. The first wall was to the west was the retaining wall for the detention basin. And then the last time we were in front of you, we had we had a two-tiered wall system and we went to a single wall. And
And
that's
where was
just
that?
so if you're looking on the screen, the large blue arrow, if you look just directly down, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the backside of the development behind the existing office building.
So that wall, I see it. That's the wall that comes off of the building and then makes
Loops,
somewhat
kind of
of
loops
a 90
around.
turn and then curves around to the backside.
Yeah, that was more extensive wall than this one that we're talking about.
And that wall, 37, 47, 53. So that went from a 14 or so foot wall and a 10-foot wall and then an 8-foot wall as it progresses towards the south. That was changed
Yeah.
from a tiered wall to a single tier, to a single wall.
Correct. Yep.
And then, so the other question that I have regarding the retaining wall is, what is the visual impact from Carter Road?
So I don't, honestly, I don't think you could see this space from Carter Road as maybe you can get, if you're driving, you'd have to be looking over your shoulder as you're going up the hill, because in front of this space is the new conference building, which is, if you recall, the building that we kind of went back and forth on a lot during the public hearing. And that has a decent height to it. And then we have a lot of landscaping, some fairly large evergreen trees going all along that slope just to the left of the red box. And so I really don't think you're going to get much of a view into this space, because it's between the existing buildings and the new buildings. So it's kind of tucked in a space that maybe you can glimpse as you drive by and look to your right hand side.
And that's
if
you were driving down, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, that's the question, is what's the visual effect? It doesn't look like there's, you can manage the visual effect on campus, but if you're driving along Carter Road and you're at 842, 844, 846, and if you're looking to the right, so if you're sitting in your car, you're probably what, 3 feet taller than that? And then you're looking at an 846 top of the proposed new wall, which is probably the same height as the previously proposed wall. You're about at the same elevation, so you're looking sort of flat across.
Yep.
So would you see it if you were going down Carter Road?
I
So
don't
that
think
you would be looking to your left then as you're driving.
right. I don't think so. Again, I think you're kind of looking over it. There's also what you will potentially see is the wall that's holding the stair. So there's a staircase running perpendicular or parallel with the access road of High Watch.
And the
Then
top
you
of
might be able
that
to see
wall
that
is
facade.
850,
Yeah.
855.
But there's also a stone wall that exists just off to the side of the access drive. If you're looking from Carter Road into the space, there's a lawn, a couple mature trees, and then a rubble stone wall.
And that rubble stone wall, as you're coming down Carter, and by the time you get around the White House,
Yeah.
You're still looking at the top of that wall being 856 to 854, and the top of the proposed wall being 846.
Right. Yeah, and there's an evergreen tree. There's two or three maples. I think it's definitely kind of an obscured view into that space.
Okay, so I just have one more question, and this is regarding I think that's the south of Bantle Hall. you're increasing the impervious surface there. Do you have to go back to the DEP for any additional calculations for the stormwater?
I don't think it's a pretty minimal area. We were going to have it planted or lawn. We do have a drain that's still capturing what would have run off that lawn area. Just to the south, there's a fairly good sized area that's just going to be open lawn with a drain in the center.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Now that you've got that two-tiered wall, does that affect any of the drainage that was built into the 10-foot wall? Were there any pipes or anything in there?
I don't, there may have been just a footing drain, but we'd keep the footing drains for the lower wall just as it was. There are a number of area drains down in that area between the wall and the new building, just because it's kind of a trap. So I think we have actually 3 in that entire area just to make sure we get it out of there.
Okay. Matt, do you think this needs to go to Anchor Engineering for any reason?
Well, I was just about to ask the commissioners, based on the discussion so far, whether we deem this to be significant enough of a change to go to public hearing, which is what Donna alluded to in the beginning. So before we ask, I think that if we determine that this is significant enough change to go to public hearing, then yes, we should send it to Anchor. If we determine that it's not, that we can make this determination without going to public hearing, then we can discuss that a little bit further. So I'd like to hear from the balance of the commissioners. That's the first question that I would like to answer is, should we go to public hearing, or can we rule on this application without a public hearing?
For what I've heard, it seems they're moving some sidewalks, and the change to this wall is a little bigger, but I think in the scope of everything and what anybody in the public can see, it's pretty minor. I think it's something that we can look at, and we don't have to go to a public hearing.
I agree, and that given the scope of the overall project, these changes are truly immaterial.
Hello?
Karen or Annie or Alice, I was on mute, and I was just wondering if whoop, whoop. Wait.
Matt, can you hear me?
Yes,
Matt,
ma'am.
can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with what Mark just proposed.
Great. Thank you, Alice.
I do too. I do as well. I don't see any reason to take this to public hearing. I guess what I'd like to know, for just the heck of it, is what kind of landscaping is in between these 2 walls. And also, I can't read the printout that I have. It's just my own problem, how far that is from Carter Road footage wise.
So this is
How many
Mike Dort.
How many feet from Carter Road is that wall? It seems awfully close.
Yeah, Mike can measure that very quickly on his
I'm just curious.
So I'm just going to go from the stairs to Carter Road. It's 115 feet from the stairs, which are just above this wall.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer your first question on the landscaping, we didn't do a full planting plan of this area, but it would be in the same vein as the building down below, where we have a mix of perennials, grasses, flowering perennials. probably maybe a few shrubs, but we didn't envision planting trees within the 10-foot space, just because of the kind of shading effect down below. We just had a issue with the potential for this to feel more like an alleyway, so we were trying to keep that to a minimum. So the walls, I don't know if anyone has seen any of the ones out there yet, but they're really a nice veneer on them. So we're not certainly trying to hide them, but we did just want to break it up. So most things would probably be about 30 inches tall, just to still see some of that stone work, but break it up.
Would the change to this wall impact any of the access that the volunteer fire department might have?
That's a good question.
Nope. So right above the wall, you can see to the image on the right, there is still a sidewalk that takes you between Jackman and over to the new building. And so we haven't changed any of the access routes that were previously there.
Okay, so I generally agree that these changes are minor in nature, that we can review these without a public hearing. So I would ask, we've had some good discussion. I would ask, does the commission have any other questions, or can I ask for a motion to react to this application?
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept the application. I'm not sure that there are any other stipulations unless somebody has any, and there's your motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you both. Any other discussion from the commissioners? With, I'll because I can't help myself, I'll say that we hope in engineering and pre-construction that we capture everything that we need to capture and we don't have to change anything as we go to construction. Sometimes we're successful at that and sometimes we're not. I'd like to see fewer changes to this application, only because it's such high profile. But I agree that these are they're maybe not quite as immaterial as Mark says they are, but I think they're pretty close to that. So it's based on that, and if nobody else has anything to say, I'll call the vote. So all those in favor of approving the application, so signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
And motion carries. Okay, so thank you, Jason, for stopping sharing your screen so we can see to all of us, all our smiling faces. Mike, thank you again for joining us and sticking around.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Okay, so moving on to 6B3, which is a preliminary discussion from Stacy Spence, 235 Bulls Bridge Road, map 6, block 11, lot 3, operation of home occupation and accessory building located in a business hamlet district. So, Donna, why don't you let us know why there should be a preliminary to what we're talking about here?
Okay, basically, Stacy, who used to own the bakery in the center of town, bought a piece of property down on Bulls Bridge Road. If you're coming south on 7 and you make the left onto Bulls Bridge, it's the like the third and fourth house on the right-hand side. And as part of that property, there's a detached accessory building. It was an old garage. And what she would like to do is she would actually like to convert that accessory garage into a kitchen, and do some wholesale baking out of that. She said she would be providing food for, you know, the local restaurants and people who want them. She wasn't sure exactly how much on-site visits she would have from people who want to buy the product. It wasn't that it was going to be a store. You know, she just wanted to know, could that be considered a home occupation? So if you look at the regulations, and I thank Wes, even though he's not here, it's actually in the business hamlet district. And so it's an overlay of the rural district. There is, she can, permitted by a special permit, is a bakery, delicatessen, ice cream parlor, that kind of thing. But I don't think she wants to go that far. I think really what she's looking at is to have a minor home occupation. And then when you go and you look at the minor home occupations, it talks about a dwelling unit. Now, this garage is not a dwelling unit. So you know, I'm coming up with semantics, because if she's going to be doing any kind of, even if she does a major home occupation, it would still be, you know, she'd have to come in for a special permit. If it's a minor one, then I can go ahead and give her the zoning permit. My question to you guys is, what, I looked up all the definitions for a dwelling unit, and that's something that somebody can live in. So does that mean that she cannot operate in that garage because it's not a dwelling unit?
Why?
Or do we actually let her, by special permit, have a bakery in that little building?
Why is this any different than anybody who's a furniture maker or whatever they are that's building something in their garage? I mean, when we wrote our current regulations, and when we wrote the POCD, we did it to enhance the ability for people to have home occupations, whether it was in the barn or it was in their main house. I don't understand why that makes any difference. If she wants to operate a wholesale bakery where she's not having the general public come, I'm not sure why there's any issue at all. That's what we wanted people to do.
Okay, but if you look at the definition for a home-based business, it's the use of a portion of a dwelling for business purposes by a resident occupant.
Well, I think
She's
that's
not-
a mistake, and we should have to rewrite that, because that was not the intention.
Well, if we're gonna do that, then we have to change the regulations before she can go ahead and operate. That's my question to you guys. We're at the point now where we're breaking down into the regulations with true uses, and we're seeing all of the little things that are popping up that are like, oh, we might need to change that. You know, that wasn't what we meant, you know, or it's not a practical application based on the semantics of the wording. I mean, if you want to make it so that it's not as strict, with the understanding that she can operate in that little garage as long as she's living in the dwelling unit on the property, I'm okay with that too.
May I ask a question, Donna?
Yeah.
Somebody, if she's planning to put in a kitchen and cook out there, does she have water? Does she have, is there something in Torrington Health about ovens and bakery, all that kind of stuff? I mean,
she will definitely have to be licensed by Torrington Area Health, by the
Right.
Department of Consumer Protection. She'll have to go through the whole licensing.
Will she have to have a
process.
laboratory? Does she have to have a laboratory in there?
I don't think she will, because she's not going to have any. She'll have one employee. It would be just herself and one other person, and that's it.
It's a completely separate building. It's not attached to the house.
It is not.
And it's used right now as a garage?
It's like a storage. At one point in time, I think the guy might have had his boat in there or something.
How far
So
is
it's an
it from the
accessory
building?
dwelling, right? I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
How far apart are they? This is like literally a detached garage that's 15 feet away.
Yes, it's
Okay.
detached.
It seems like
There's
a,
no mistaking. There's no mistaking that it's a standalone building.
right. But it's clearly very associated with the dwelling. It's not like a 10-acre
It is-
property and it's 200 feet away, right?
No, it is clearly associated with the main dwelling unit on the property.
Is there a driveway there?
Not to that building, no. Not now, there isn't. I don't know if there was at one point in time.
Would she have to, I mean, she'd have to put something in, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, she would probably do all the baking that she needed to do in there, and then the people would pull into her regular driveway where her house is, and then pick up whatever it was that she baked for them.
Okay, so there would be no like retail space within this.
No, that's not her intention. Her intention
Uh-huh.
is not to have retail space.
And it wouldn't be allowed, the retail space.
Well, it would if you look at retail stores are permitted by special permit under the Business Hamlet District.
For her to have a retail
That's right,
store.
that's right.
it
By
would
a
open up-
special permit, though.
it
Right,
would open
special
up
permit.
A whole new set of things that she would have to jump through, including
Yes.
parking.
Right.
So, Donna, she said in the beginning that this was an accessory building?
It's an accessory building.
Okay. So it says, though, in home-based businesses, that any home-based business located within an accessory building shall not exceed 800 square
100
feet.
square feet. Right.
So is she going to exceed 800 square feet?
I don't believe that she is. What's 800 square feet? It's like what, 20 by 40? What's the size of like a 20 by 40, right? Is 800 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the size of a two-car garage?
24 by 14, 28, maybe, right? 14 and 14.
Close.
Right.
Or 12 by 12 is 20, 22 and 24 deep. So yeah, it's certainly less than 800.
Certainly less than 800 square feet.
So I would say based on that parameter, so she's got two choices. She can operate under the home-based business, which allows her to operate an accessory in an accessory building, whether it's a dwelling unit or not, provided that she doesn't exceed 800 square feet, or she can apply under special permit for the within the Business Hamlet District. That make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted clarification of the dwelling, and it's like, is it sufficient enough to say she lives on the property in a dwelling unit and therefore she can have this minor home occupation in a detached structure?
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be a minor business. I think that it's more than that, but
Doesn't it seem like the language allows for it as long as it's under 800 square feet? Well, it seems like the language around the dwelling was specific to the dwelling. It needs to be secondary to the fact that you live there. But the way I read that, it seems like it's just fine if it's in an accessory.
That's right, David. Absolutely. It's just a question of, to Annie's point, is it major or minor? Because minor is allowed by zoning permit, but major requires a special permit, which is the same thing you would have to go through with the.
Does a commercial kitchen mean it's a major? That seems like would be a demarcation point.
Yeah. So what is it? What's the definition of major and minor? And I think
I researched this last year, and it didn't seem like there were any good answers to that, actually.
But would it have to have a, occupancy sign off? Like, would the building inspector have to?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh,
all
yeah.
right. I-
And I mean, at this point in time, she just closed on the property. I don't know, like a week ago or something. And
Okay.
this was something that is, that she's planning to do in the future. I don't know when. Maybe she'll work on it during the winter time. But I just wanted to get some guidance so that when she has a business plan and she's ready to start doing what she needs to do, I can just get her in and get her out, and it's not going to be a hassle at that point in time. So we're just trying to, be a little bit proactive as opposed to being reactive. But now that I have your guidance, then, we can go and I'll make the determination when she comes to me with her plan to make the determination as to whether or not it's something that just requires a zoning permit or something that requires a special permit. And I can make that determination.
Yeah, I think absolutely you can, Donna. And it seems like our definition for, the qualification between minor and major is simply how many visitors they have, how many employees they have, and how many, so it's really, I think it comes down to traffic.
Right.
So if it's minor and there's, it's according to this is, one non-resident employee and no more than 5 visits a week by non-residents, and no more than 2 visits by non-resident people at any one time. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward, right?
And less than 800 square feet.
And less than 800 square feet. So yeah, I think you're perfectly capable of making that determination.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure, they talk about, the dwelling unit, and she's not dwelling in that. And
Yeah,
okay, so good to know for
exactly.
the future. So
It sounds like she really wants to keep baking.
she does. She does. Absolutely. Okay.
Okay. So it is 9:54, just as a point of reference. Moving on to 6B3, which is, 7A, staff report, proposal to the Board of Selectmen for the creation of a town ordinance regarding food trucks. Is that something that we should tackle tonight, Donna?
I would like to, because the Board of Selectmen's meeting is next Tuesday.
Okay, fine.
So, and if they agree and think it's a good idea, then it could be possible to have the ordinance ready in time for the January town meeting. So the reason for this discussion is that you all remember the situation with the food trucks and all the flack that I got. And quite honestly, you don't pay me enough to take all that crap. So considering that a food truck is a temporary structure and not something that really impacts the land use because it's temporary, I don't think that it's actually a zoning issue. After reading a lot about food trucks and looking to see what other towns have done, it's all been handled via the First Selectman's office through the town ordinance process. So it kind of falls in line with a hawker's license, a peddler's license, and all of those licenses are handled through the First Selectman's office. I know that Randy DeBella, who is the town attorney, has written a very comprehensive town ordinance for the town of New Milford with regard to food trucks. And I believe that he is capable of writing one just as comprehensive for the town of Kent. So as long as I've got your support, this is the pitch that I'm going to make to the Board of Selectmen at the Tuesday night meeting.
I thought our regs prohibited food trucks, and that hot dog truck on Route 7 was pre-existing and therefore was okay.
Yes, and that's true. The reason that they prohibit food trucks is because it's not listed as an approved use. So the way that our regulations are written, if it's something that is not allowed via as of right or listed for zoning or special permit, then it's not allowed. And that's how I've been regulating it. But I think it's pretty clear from the residents of the town. I've had a number of people that have come in and said, you know, we think that so-and-so should have a food truck. And I just graduated college and I did a food truck while I was going to school, and I want to do a food truck in Kent. And it was like, look, I'm sorry, they're not allowed. Come to us and with a rewrite of the regulations to allow it. Nobody wanted to take that on. And then just doing the research that I did shows that it actually is something that comes out of the selectman's office via an ordinance and not managed by the zoning department, like I said, because it's not a permanent structure. It's not a structure. It's temporary. Like, I don't regulate tents. So because they're temporary. And I consider this to be the same thing.
Annie?
I'm so sorry that you took all that flack, Donna. I really am. And I hate food trucks. I think they parachute in and take all the business and drive away, and they don't pay taxes. They use our bathrooms. They change the traffic of the town. But people think they want food trucks because they think they're going to get it's going to be more fun, or they belong at festivals. They don't belong in the center of town. I feel very strongly about this. But I saw all that feedback you got on Facebook, and it was ridiculous. So if people think they want food trucks, you're saying that the Board of Selectmen then decides?
Well, no, what would happen is, because it's an ordinance that, in order to be put on the books, would need to be voted in by the town residents at the town meeting. So if the residents don't want it, then the ordinance doesn't get put in, and then we just continue on as we have. But when they call me to talk to me about it, I would refer them to the selectman's office. And they would be the ones that would have the pleasure of explaining why they're not allowed. And then they will be the ones that are talked about on Facebook. So, sorry, I'm being very blunt. It's 10 o'clock at night and I just don't care.
Yeah, so the question is, I mean, we as a commission, tacitly, through the rewrite of the regulations, have said that food trucks are not allowed, right? But the premise of that is that we should be regulating food trucks, and Donna makes a great point that food trucks don't really fall under the purview of land use because it's not a permanent use. Our job is to regulate the use on specific properties, and the properties are defined in the tax law. I'm sorry, on the tax maps. And the only reason that the hot dog truck is on the property that it is because it's always been there. And as Mark pointed out, the operator of the hot dog truck came to us a few years ago and said, I want to move someplace else. And we said, well, if you move someplace else, you're going to run afoul of something, because it's certainly, for us, it's not allowed. So
Right.
The idea was, stay where you are and nobody's going to bother you.
Right. That's exactly what it was. And Chris stayed.
But if say Katie Moore, who owns the Golden Falcon, says, well, I want a food truck there, isn't that a land use
Yeah, but she would have to come to us and say, I want to put a food truck there. And we would say, well, there's nothing in the regulations that allows a food truck, and therefore you can't do it because our regulations are by inclusion, right? So anything that's allowed, that's listed is allowed, and anything that's not listed is not allowed.
It's not, and I want to be clear, Katie Moore did not come to me. So,
But Matt, that's confusing to me, because then could they turn around and go to the selectman's office and say, I want to put a truck in? I mean,
They can't now because there's no ordinance. And
well, I
that's what
know
would like-
now, but I thought, Matt, you were saying in the future.
If we decide, I'm sorry to cut you off, Alice, but if we say, you know, we don't want to regulate food trucks because we as a commission believe that food trucks should not be regulated by us, and it should be regulated by the Board of Selectmen. The only way that the Board of Selectmen can regulate it is through an ordinance. So if there's an ordinance that says they're allowed, then they can come for a permit to the selectmen, and if it's not allowed, then
And the citizens approve the ordinance, and the ordinance can have specifications. It's not just like anybody can bring a truck in. It has to be certain times a day or weeks or, okay.
Yeah, like
ordinance
New Milford
be
does a
temporary.
lottery system. I mean, it's like first come, first serve, it's lottery. They have a certain number of spots. They can't be placed within 500 feet of a brick and mortar restaurant. There are certain conditions that have to that they have to meet in order to actually operate. So, and that's what the ordinance would say.
I think this is the right way to go. I think we should take it off planning and zoning's shoulders. I think it should be up to the town ordinance, and I would say my suggestion would be to have the Kent Chamber of Commerce involved in this, because my concern is exactly some of the things that Ann just mentioned. How does it harm the existing businesses, which God knows right now are already in a tough spot? And all the points that Ann made are very valid. So I think we should just get it out of our hair and let them have an ordinance and let the selectmen and the Chamber of Commerce deal with it.
And
just for the record, I reached out to the Chamber of Commerce and they didn't answer any of my questions.
Why am I not surprised?
Not to belabor this, I know everybody's tired, but don't we have an ordinance about trailers?
That's a regulation.
I mean, a regulation about trailers? Those
Yeah.
are temporary structures.
Yeah. You can only use it 2 weeks out of the year on your property, and the rest of the time it's got to be stored outside of the setbacks.
Well, I don't know. I'm hearing a conflict, though. Why couldn't we say the same thing about a food truck?
That a food truck can only be used for 3 weeks out of the year, or for the summer months only, or?
Well, I'm just saying you're basing on kicking this over to the selectman's office because it's not a structure.
Right.
And that's the only reason I'm saying this, because we do say something about a trailer, and that's not a structure either.
Right. And I think the reason that we have the trailers is because a lot of people will put campers and trailers when they're doing the construction of their houses. So we needed to regulate how long they would be able to use them during the course of the construction. That was always my understanding.
The food trucks move from property to property, whereas the trailers, I think, would be sitting on someone's property for long term, right? That was the thinking.
Right.
Well, you could make that same argument for a food truck, right? I mean, yeah, that's
An ordinance gives the town or the selectman's office the ability to regulate or allow a given food truck to be in a specific place on a specific date or for a specific period of time, which I don't think we really can do in our regulations. I think an ordinance for a food truck is good, and because the selectman's office can also enforce that better than we can enforce that, better than Donna would be able to enforce that. It's a, let them have it. Let them regulate it.
Yeah, and a quick scan of the regulations talks, and we're really talking trailers. We're talking more about storage of most of these things, but once we get past the definition, all of the references to trailers,
It's construction driven.
it's construction driven, and it's storage of recreational vehicles, recreational trailers. That's not so much an RV, but it's a trailer, a tow behind trailer. So rural residential district, there's talk about the storage, and the Birch Hill district talk about storage. So yeah, I think it's a little bit different. I think Alice makes a great point, that we should be eyes wide open. But on preliminary review, I should say, we're really talking about storage and not business related.
Are we being asked to do anything by anybody? I mean, is the town saying to us, well, you let us have this, or you're going to keep it for yourself? Or, I mean,
No, it's simply that our regulations by omission don't allow them, and Donna would prefer to put her efforts in other zoning enforcement areas.
I understand, but I mean, it's not like the town is considering an ordinance or it's going to consider an ordinance for food trucks. I mean, they're not asking us, hey, will you let us?
I think Donna's asking us. I think Donna wants to propose that, Mark.
Right. I would like to propose to the Board of Selectmen that an ordinance be created for the town, because starting in around Easter, I probably get 2 calls a week from people who say, we have a food truck, we want to set it up. I mean, it's a constant.
I hate those people.
All right, so there's no proposal to the town. You're proposing that we go to the town and say, you guys
Yes.
deal with this.
Exactly.
Fine.
Right. If my proposal is going to be, please contact Randy DeBella and have him write a town ordinance regarding food trucks like he did for New Milford. And then that would get put on the January town meeting for inclusion in the town ordinances, so that when the springtime comes in 2021, then they can go ahead and people who want to put up food trucks would be able to do so.
Well, Donna, I hope it's not like the one they wrote for New Milford, because we're not New Milford.
No.
Okay, so I just don't want it to be like New Milford's.
No, it won't be. It can't be. It can't be like New Milford. But he has the, he's got the background and the experience because he's already done it. So he's done it once, he can do it again.
Well, I hope he doesn't do it like New Milford.
It'll be interesting to see what our townspeople say about this. It's going to be a saga.
Yeah, it already is. Yeah, I mean, it really is. So, okay, I'm done.
All right, so listen, it's a staff report. I don't think it requires a motion and a vote, but I think that there should be some consensus whether we should ask Donna to move this forward with the Board of Selectmen. So I think I'm in favor of it, but we should hear from everybody else.
I'm in favor of it.
I'm not sure that I am, because I think that if the selectmen haven't already figured out that they want to do this, why are we telling them they should do this? Just because we get 6 calls every spring? And until this year, I've never heard it be a problem before. So, I mean, what is our recommendation is to call them and say, okay, this is your problem. They come back and say, well, what's your recommendation? And your answer is go to the lawyer who wrote one for New Milford.
Only because he's our town lawyer.
Well, I know, but I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I mean,
meant
that's
by experience, he's done this.
right.
Yeah, it's a question of is it a land use issue or is it a town ordinance issue? I've been somewhat convinced that it has been a land use issue and maybe it shouldn't be. So yeah, that's what I think.
Well, when the next person comes to Donna to say, I want to have a food truck, why can't she just say, none of my business, go talk to the town? I mean, I'm a little bit with Alice. It's why we should be telling the town, we think you should adopt an ordinance to permit food trucks.
Well, because they wouldn't be able to do that without one.
Well, that's fine.
So the town would say, well, we're not permitting them. So,
Okay. I mean, but I need them to tell me that that's how they want to handle it. If they say to me at the Board of Selectmen's meeting on Tuesday, no, we don't want to have an ordinance, then it's like, okay, fine. But when I get a phone call for a food truck, and it's coming to you so that you can tell them that, no, they're not allowed. I mean, because now it's operating the other way. So.
Yeah, so it's a question. I mean, it's not really a question of passing the buck. I don't think it's just a question of where it's most valuable. So where does the discussion belong? And if we commission say it's the discussion belongs in land use, then we'll continue to keep it in land use, and we'll continue to say, through Donna, and it won't mostly come to us, and Donna will say you can't have a food truck; it's not allowed. And that'll be the stock response.
Matt, do you think as head of P&Z, you should be the one discussing this with the selectman's office?
Well, I think government is a tricky thing. I think that, I think parenting is a tricky thing. I think that, managing a business is tricky. That's, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it, until somebody says, dude, why aren't you doing this thing? My 19-year-old boy says things to me all the time that I'm doing wrong. And it's not wrong. That's the wrong thing. That things that I maybe should be doing better.
How would he advise us on the food truck issue?
He would say, let them have them.
Sure.
Nathan's going to say, I wanted tacos.
Yeah.
What I was hearing from Donna is that if we don't want her to be jumping off the roof of the town hall, that she wants the food truck nose to be coming from somewhere else, or at least to narrowly define them with somebody else.
Right.
I kind of like what Mark said, which is Donna should say it's not permitted. You'd have to have an ordinance. Go talk to the first selectman. Bye-bye.
Well, actually, I would say something a little bit different. That somebody comes to Donna and say, I want to have a food truck, and she would just say, not our business, not P&Z. Go talk to the Board of Selectmen, and that somebody should now tell the Board of Selectmen, we're not taking jurisdiction over this stuff anymore. You should adopt an ordinance or not. Do whatever you want, but we're not taking jurisdiction over food trucks anymore. I mean, I just don't think we should be telling them, go adopt an ordinance.
Oh, I'm not going to tell them. It's going to be my recommendation that they adopt if they want. It is going to be that conversation. The
let's be
Planning and
sure.
Zoning Commission has made a determination that food trucks do not fall underneath their jurisdiction. And if the town wants to have food trucks, then they should prepare a town ordinance and manage them that way.
My fear is that people think they want a food truck, they want food trucks, and trust me, they don't.
Right.
And that we're just opening a big can of worms, and I think that I'm afraid the Board of Selectmen don't understand the impact of food trucks only because they haven't been in business.
But if they have to deal with the public and create an ordinance, they're going to learn. They're going to hear.
Well, Jean Speck is on this call. Can we hear from her?
Maybe she's not on there.
Yeah, I think this is a discussion, and certainly we'd be happy to hear from Jean. I was toying with the idea of asking her to weigh in, because I see that she's here, but I suspect that she's listening and maybe smiling in the background. But
I just want us to be careful that for ever how many years I've been on the commission, until this last go round with social media kind of tearing up on Donna in particular in the town about the unfairness of not allowing food trucks, we've lived pretty happily with the knowledge that if there is not a regulation, it precludes food trucks. That is a way of denying food trucks, right?
yeah,
That
absolutely.
is a method of denying food trucks. So we have willingly denied food trucks by not addressing food trucks in our regs.
By
I
omitting
think
them.
that the selectman's office should know that. We're not coming to them to say, hey, everybody thinks we should have food trucks, but it ought to be an ordinance, not a regulation. I think there's a very different message there.
I agree with that, Alice. So the question remains on the table. Should we have Donna recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they manage the food trucks, whether it's by ordinance, whether they by adopting an ordinance or not adopting an ordinance, or do we continue to have Donna for us to field the request for food trucks? And we've heard from Adam and I, who think that it would be reasonable for Donna to go and talk to the Board of Selectmen, and I think we've heard from Annie and Mark and Alice, and I think Karen, but Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's no reason to put this into the Board of Selectmen's bailiwick, because we don't need to.
I agree with that.
We're at 2-4. I don't know, a firm sense of where David stands.
I think that what Donna, I mean, I'm like Annie, the grief you took was unacceptable. I mean, but social media does this kind of stuff now. And I think for you to be the messenger, there's a lot of emotion there, and you're going to say, okay, you all create the ordinance. It's your job. And by saying that, that's an implication that, okay, let's have food trucks, but you guys are going to be in charge of it.
I don't want them to have food trucks. I just need someone to take responsibility for them, because for the past, I don't know how many years, it has been they're not allowed, but then they do call the first selectman's office and they're like, well, we don't know what to do. And so everybody looks like idiots. So I think
well, the bottom line is we haven't had food trucks, so it's working.
Well, they haven't had food trucks because I have said we don't allow food trucks.
Well, keep saying it.
I mean, if you want me to keep saying it, I will. But when I get into a situation like I got into the last time, where certain people believe that the regulations don't apply to them and they're going to do whatever they want to do anyway, then I'm throwing my hands up. There's got to be some kind of definitive answer one way or another. And if they don't want to listen to the land use office, then maybe they'll listen to the Board of Selectmen.
So I wasn't around for that, and I'm sorry, I know it's late, but just give me a quick answer. That food truck guy was an experienced food truck guy. He should have known he needed a permit. Every year for 24 years at Annie Banani's, I gave away free cheeseburgers on Cheeseburger and Paradise Night. I needed a permit. I had to get a permit. I knew that. He should have known that. What was his excuse? Did he say anything?
The shutdown was not done by the land use office. The shutdown was done by Torrington Area Health. And I don't know, because he did not have a permit to operate there. If he wasn't shut down by Torrington Area Health, he would have been shut down by the fire marshal, because the location of the food truck was blocking an entrance into a major complex and would have prevented any kind of emergency vehicles from getting in there. So it was a poorly planned situation from the get-go.
Okay, so let's do this, because it sounds, Donna, as if it sounds as if the commission is not in favor of you asking the Board of Selectmen to craft, or to have the attorney craft, an ordinance. So why don't we as a commission say that because food trucks, or just clarify, because food trucks are not permitted by use, by right, or at all by our regulations, that the stock response to food trucks has to be no. And I know that's what you've been doing.
We should preserve the right to say no. I think Donna suggested we abrogate that right to somebody else and tell them we're abrogating it so they don't keep harassing her, and by extension planning and zoning. Wasn't that the question?
It could be, David. Absolutely. We could say to Donna that's the land use doesn't regulate food trucks. I'll leave it at that.
That's what I would be in favor of, just saying we no longer regulate food trucks, and that we should go to the Board of Selectmen and tell them we are no longer going to regulate food trucks. When we get questions about them, we're going to refer them to you. Have a nice day.
Well, if that's the wording, that's fine, but I don't think we want to go to the Board of Selectmen and say, you all need to create an ordinance.
I agree with that.
Because if they create an ordinance, they're going to be some trucks.
Great, but we're abrogating our, we're not, as Mark says, we're not regulating food trucks anymore. So whatever anybody wants to do about food trucks, have at it. We're not involved. All right. So can we say that to Donna? Donna, is that acceptable to you, that you just tell everybody that food trucks don't fall within the purview of the planning of zoning, of land?
That's fine. And I'll refer them to the board, and I'll refer them to the Board of Selectmen.
Do you have to? Do you have to refer them to somebody, or can you just say, that's not us? I suppose to be fair, Ty's laughing right at me.
I think if you don't pass it along to somebody else, that what we're going to get is a situation where somebody decides to put a food truck where they're not allowed to, which is exactly what happened, which is exactly what they want to. Torrington Area Health may have been the end body that shut it down, but it was on Donna. I think she should just say that they're not allowed through the Planning and Zoning Commission. Go talk to the first selectman's office and pass it to them. And that way it's not on her, because it's not that we don't regulate it, because nobody's ever come before us. If somebody comes before us and presents us with a regulation, who knows what we decide. But I think she should pass it off and get it off her plate when somebody asks, and direct it to the first selectman's office. And the first selectman's office, if they decide that this is a big enough issue that they want to create an ordinance, they can do that. And their ordinance might say that food trucks are not allowed.
Okay. Sounds good. Don, is that enough?
That's good.
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, you're welcome.
And what if they say, we don't think it should be an ordinance, we're going to tell everybody it's a zoning regulation? I mean, we could be doing this for 6 months. I mean, this
What
could be,
about sending them to Torrington Area Health? Say, go
Yeah.
talk to the health
yeah,
department.
go talk to the
No,
health
no,
department.
because Torrington Area Health would give them their permit if they qualify and refer them to
Right.
me.
Right.
I see.
I mean, you know, it could have been that this guy that owned the food truck would have qualified for a permit from Kathy, and she would be obligated to give it to them and then refer them to zoning.
But we don't regulate food trucks.
Well, we don't
No,
allow
we
food
don't.
trucks.
We don't allow.
We don't
But we
allow.
don't-
Now
just
we
don't-
don't regulate them.
But we just don't regulate it now because nobody's come before us to offer
But
up.
they do, Adam. They come, I'll tell you when they come. They come for the 2 weeks in August for summer sale days, and they come for the champagne stroll.
I'm not saying they don't come. I'm just saying that we don't regulate them.
We don't allow them.
We don't allow them. We don't not only regulate them.
Until somebody tries to bring, there's a process for this. When something isn't allowed, you fill out a request to create a regulation, and that's the answer. If somebody wants to do it that bad, they can go that route, and then we can turn them down if that's what we want to do.
Okay, I'm gonna use the authority vested in me to move on to the next discussion.
Okay.
By all of you. Okay.
Excellent.
So if that's okay, then I'm moving on. Donna, you have everything you need?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then let's go to, I'm going to move past 8A, which is the subdivision regulation subcommittee, because we spoke about that earlier. That's tabled until we can, until Kent Coffee and Chocolate stops having their drive-through.
Okay, well, how about if I take that one item off of the agenda and leave the other one on? I mean, once we meet, then I'll add it back in.
All right, good. Good. That way you
So
don't
I
have to
can
keep
remove
editing
that.
it twice.
Okay.
And then 9A is administrative permits. And Donna, I went back and looked at the administrative permits or the certificates of compliance issued, and I didn't see the certificate of compliance for the art storage facility. And I went back a couple of meetings and I didn't see it, and I had sent just for the balance of the commission, I had sent Donna an email because I saw a notice from Billy saying, advertising that he had opened up his art storage facility, and I had also recently heard some strong complaints from members of the community wondering why that monstrosity of an ugly building was allowed to be built in that location. And so to have it open by a administrative permit or certificate of zoning compliance when it wasn't the whole building, and I can't imagine why the building department would have closed out that building permit for only half of the building, half of what we did.
Because the storage building was a standalone structure.
But it wasn't a standalone application.
Right. But it was agreed that they could start the storage building because they didn't have the money to do both at the same time. So they put their money in the storage building so that they could start using the storage building to store artwork, to collect the money until they could get the funding to start the actual gallery, which they have done. The foundation I think is in at this point in time.
Yeah, and that's for me, that's somewhat the saving grace, that they started the construction of the front building.
Right.
But I don't think the original approval had any phasing in it. I don't think that we as the commission tacitly approved of a phased a phased approval, and only, you know, it's fine. It's great that they're building the front building, but if we had issued a certificate of zoning compliance for the back building and they didn't build the front building for 2 or 3 or 4 or 12 or however many years, I think that we would have run afoul of the members of our community.
Okay. How do you force someone to actually build what they are planning to build? I mean, we have one building that is at the southern gateway to the town that has been worked on to a certain extent and still not finished. But how do you force someone to do what they say that they're going to do?
Well, I would say that that Southern Gateway property, that didn't, the lower parking lot and the stone wall and the residential structure there didn't come before the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Came before the Architecture Review Board. The stone wall never did. But I mean, that's a whole nother different conversation.
That's right. So,
but the point is still, how do you make someone build?
Don't you impose daily fines?
No.
yeah, no, I don't think you can. But you can not issue a certificate of zoning compliance for half of the for half of the project. That's what I would say. That's you can whether it's the right thing to do or not, for a a valued member of the community, and I don't know what's right, but it seems odd to issue a to issue a certificate of occupancy from the building department, certainly for a project that's half complete. The one structure might be complete, but I've never heard of that before. So I only want to say that it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable that we had issued a certificate of zoning compliance for a project that was not complete in accordance with the approval, with the zoning approval.
Let me look at the approval, because I believe that they were two separate. While they were on one permit, I believe that they were two separate structures.
Well, certainly there were separate structures, and if we allowed those separate structures, with that approval, if we said, certainly you can start to use one without the other, then that's fine. Then I'll rescind my, and it's not really an objection. It's just a sort of a gut.
Okay.
discussion. That make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Then that's all I got on the administrative and certificates of compliance issued. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome, Matt.
And then the monthly financials I look through, and it seems everything seems to be on track. We seem to be again ahead of schedule in terms of money in.
I believe that for the first quarter, because I don't think those numbers are really up to date yet, we might be at our projected revenue income now for the whole year. I think this first quarter we've already hit what we would have hit for the whole year, because we have just been slammed. I know last month Ty did 71 building permits, and average is about anywhere from 36 maybe 40, and 40 was a busy month. She did 71 just last month. I think the building department, inland wetlands, my inland wetlands, I budgeted for income is $800. I'm at 900 already. And it's just the first quarter. So I can't even begin to tell you the amount of applications that I have waiting for Torrington Area Health approval, because she is just slammed. She is just with new houses and major projects. It truly is. It's unbelievable. So.
Well, if we can hang on to our true nature with some economic benefit and some growth, I know I sound like a Republican, but I think it's good. I think it's good.
I don't think that I don't think it's a bad thing. Even the population in school has gone up. We have more kids that are going to school right now. We have a house that's being built that's $15 million in the Hollow. The average is well over $1 million for any new house that's coming in now. So we're going to be getting some, at least we'll be able to benefit tax-wise, at this point in time.
So let's hang on to our true nature. Let's decide on what our true nature is, and then hold tight.
I'll tell you that, the next time I'm at work at 10 o'clock in the morning instead of at work at 10:30 at night.
Well, we can build back better.
Okay. So then, on that note, Mark, that's great. Let's I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion made, yeah. Seconded.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. I know these meetings, maybe I'm not doing a great job of moving them along, but I enjoy spending time with you all. So thanks, and I'll see you in a month.
Okay.
Everybody.
Enjoy.